no hulu o pili no me kalahiti ola I ke komokunui o Hawaii ke kau nei o Hawaii luna mehelu pela kalele oni ke po o kaina na pele kula ka mahale o a helu ni mai te aloha 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 Halawai Anai was composed by Isabella Haleala Kaidi Miller Deshe, mother of Helen Deshe Beamer. And Miller was taught to me by her great grandson, Mahi Beamer, one of my mentors in September of 2002. I share it with all of you today and wish you all the best. Habilino ke aloha me oko. Aloha.
Naha is perhaps best known for our cultural education programming and workforce development trainings. Naha's courses are taught by respected, highly regarded practitioners of the topics they teach. Our Ola Hawaii curriculum and Train the Trainer process was developed by our founders, historian Dr. George Kanahele, and business and community leader, Senator Kenneth Brown. The rigorous certification process ensures high-quality instruction while leaving space for sensitive reflection on the topics of the day. Our target audience for our trainings have always been the visitor industry workforce, though we have discovered a much broader appetite for these topics as we moved into virtual platforms. We've had community members and visitors join us and add to the richness of these discussions. While we continue to serve our industry workforce, we are also exploring the best ways to reach beyond that. It will take all of us to shift the in partnership with the Purple Maya Foundation. Cohort members needed to have Hawaii-based and have products that showcase Hawaii in a Pono way, speaking to our collective desires towards regenerative tourism. This worked to grow opportunities for visitors to participate positively in our community and for community to contribute towards circular economy are all guided by the vision of our founders, the strategic plan of the Hawaii Tourism Authority, the priorities of community as expressed in the destination management action plans, Hawaii's sustainability goals,
1998 to address inequalities of Native peoples in tourism. Although not included in the name of the organization, Ayanta's mission does include honoring the traditions and values of the Native Hawaiian people. I am proud to say that I am on the board of directors of Ayanta, representing the Hawaii region. NAHA will continue to participate and engage with Ayanta in ensuring the Native Hawaiian voice is also represented at the highest level, both in Hawaii and on the continent. Here to share how Native Hawaiian culture is represented in Native tourism on a national level is Sherry Rupert, President and CEO of Ayanta.
Aloha and mahalo for the opportunity to express support for your 2022 Kahuna Annual Conference of the Native Hawaiian Hospitality Association from the American Indian Alaska Native Tourism Association, or Ayanta. Although some of you may know me, I wanted to take a minute to introduce myself. My name is Sherry Rupert, and I am Paiute and Washoe from Nevada. As the CEO of Ayanta, I want to express a warm congratulations for hosting another amazing conference this year. It is my understanding the conference will explore the nexus in Hawaii of community, culture, tourism, and sustainability. This conference and the work of NAHA is leading the way in building sustainable cultural tourism models that inspire the industry. Annually, Ayanta hosts tourism industry leaders, government agencies, cultural artisans, Native entrepreneurs, domestic and international tour operators, and other tourism industry professionals to talk tourism. We were honored to have participation by so many members and friends of NAHA in attendance. We were also honored to have John DeFries as a keynote speaker at our conference. We were inspired by his commitment to respect the symbiotic relationships that exist between community and culture, nature and commerce. His support for sustainable living, human rights, and Native intelligence is evident in his work and in his love for the people and land that is Hawaii. Cultural tourism practitioners in Hawaii, all of you gathering for the conference this year, are an inspiration and are leading the way for sustainable cultural tourism development. NAHA's participation at the national level through participation with Ayanta continues to nurture relationships within the industry. This work and engagement extends to Ayanta's leadership, with the Hawaiian region represented by Hi'ilani Shibata, as she currently serves on Ayanta's board of directors. The voice of Native Hawaiians is included in the initiatives that advance Native tourism efforts and best practices around the country. And although the impact of COVID-19 travel restrictions for Hawaii has been devastating to cultural tourism in the state, the approach to a regenerative tourism model is also presenting an opportunity to now reimagine what tourism will look like for Hawaii as we reemerge from the pandemic. As we begin to make the pivot to welcome our visitors back and re-engage our Indigenous communities, it is of critical It is clear to Ayanta that NAHA brings critical capacity, knowledge, and vision for advancing cultural tourism in Hawaii, and has brought their expertise to the national stage through Ayanta to share their knowledge and inspire Native nations and Indigenous communities across the United States. At Ayanta, we know it is critical that organizations like NAHA, who represent the Native peoples of their homelands and who have the experience and cultural lens from which to make the most informed decisions that affect these communities, be supported and represented nationally. Drawing visitors back to Hawaii and other Native nations and Indigenous communities must be done respectfully and in the most culturally appropriate way to ensure better balance and a more conscious visitor experience. As the only national organization specifically dedicated to advancing cultural tourism in Native nations and Indigenous communities throughout the country, IANTA is proud to congratulate NAHA on its 4th annual Kahuna Conference. I have great hope for our collective futures and in cultural tourism development because of NAHA and other leaders in this field. As you continue to Malama, your homeland for this generation and the generations to come, know that IANTA will continue to offer our support as well. Mahalo.
Mahalo to Sherry Rupert for sharing with us about the support that IANTA provides in advocating for the advancement of Native Hawaiian culture on a national level. In taking care of the place and the Native culture, it builds the foundations towards a healthy hospitality industry. Mahalo nui to all those who uplift their culture through authentic sharing as we see the travel industry as a vehicle to achieving peace around the world. Our next speaker has been with NAHA since the early years, serving as a board member and a community advocate, artist, and Native Hawaiian entrepreneur. She has been mentored by our co-founders, Dr. George Kanahele and Senator Kenny Brown, and knew them as the great advocates they were on all things Hawaiian, but also in the most human ways possible in their roles as teachers, friends, husbands, and fathers. Since the beginning, NAHA has endeavored to embody their memory and strives to continue the work they began nearly 25 years ago. Our co-founder, Dr. George Kanahele, shared mana'o about legendary and sacred spaces in his book entitled Ku Kanaka. Here he writes, no genealogical chant was possible without the mention of personal geography. No myth could be conceived without reference to a place of some kind. No family could have any standing in the community unless it had a place. No place of any significance, even the smallest, went without a name, and no history could have been made or preserved without reference, directly or indirectly, to a place. The reference to place had enormous meaning for our ancestors, and the act of stewarding the land brings with it a deep sense of kuleana, the longing for deeper understanding and connection with the land, and a reflection into the self regarding our role as Kanaka. Here to share about the perspectives of our founders, the importance of place, stewardship, and the actions of Ma'alama Aina is Maile Meyer, owner of Namea Hawaii.
NAHA is a shared vision of not only its founders, but of their ancestors and the communities they gave voice to, Kanaka, who have always been connected to place, to Onehanau, the lands of our birth, and can speak to that connection because of the times we are in. Like breathing, it is only natural for people of place, Hawaiians, to malama, to care, protect, and learn again to be in intimate relationships with Aina, wind, rain, creatures, plants. That is our rooted belief system. All are on equal footing, all considered, all connected. Through generations of in-depth observation and pilina, Hawaiians and people who support indigenous values have created regenerative, integrated systems that include land, sea, and humanity, partners with all of the elemental and natural resources that make up a planetary ohana. This representation, this voice, is an essential role NAHA can fill in Hawaii today, especially for the visitor industry, translating the stewarding and caring of deep relationships with Honua, our living earth, setting an example of how man and nature can thrive as true partners in our changing world.
Mahalo Maile Meyer for sharing about Malama being at the helm of everything we do, just as John DeFries shared with us yesterday. Malama Ku'uhome is an important part of working towards a regenerative future for Hawaii. There is still so much to do. He ali'i ka'aina, he kawa ke kanaka. The land is chief, man is its servant. In this Olelo No'eau, we express our relationship with the land and the aspect of stewardship expressed in the roles and relationships we play. Achieving true sustainability will result from a collaboration between community, culture, and a responsible economy. Achieving the regenerative means each must support one another in order to create the conditions for all to flourish. Regenerative tourism, in its roots in Dr. Kanahele's guest host place model, for so long it's been all about the guest. And as a result, the host and the place have suffered. But in the regenerative model, host and place are the supermajority. Focusing on community and places provides opportunities to thrive and, when appropriate, to utilize the guests to do so. In this next panel, we will discuss the curation, cultivation, and management of our natural resources. What innovations are advancing the visitor industry's efforts to be better stewards of Hawaii's natural resources? Leading us in this conversation is Hannah Thompson, Sustainability Business Forum Coordinator for the Hawaii Green Growth Hawaii Local 2030 Hub.
Aloha, and thank you for joining us today in our conversation about the curation, cultivation, and management of our natural resources in relation to regenerative tourism. My name is Hannah Thompson, and I'm joined by our three wonderful panelists today. Kurt Cottrell, Administrator with DLNR, Presley Wan, the President of Hui Maka'aina na Omakana, and Kalisi Mausio, founder of Hawaii Farm Trails. Regenerative tourism really finds its roots in Dr. Kanahele's guest host place model. And for so long, it's been all about the guest. And as a result of that, the place and host have suffered. But in the regenerative model, if you think of it as a pie, guests or place and host have 2/3 of that say, and they are the supermajority. Focusing on community and places provides the opportunities to thrive and, when appropriate, to utilize the guests to do so. To advance a regenerative tourism model, we must put Malama at the center of every transaction that we encounter. Kenny Brown was one of NAHA's founders, and in his 1973 Malama speech, he talks about the principle of Malama and how it needs to guide all of our transactions and meet every one of those transactions needs to meet the test of Malama at all times. So today I am joined by three panelists who are putting Malama at the forefront of their work in natural resource management to advance a regenerative tourism model here in Hawaii. Kurt, can I turn to you first for you to give a little bit more background about how you found yourself in this work and some pivotal moments that brought you here?
No, absolutely. Yeah, and it is a privilege to be here, and especially with these folks. I have an interesting path that I took to get to being the administrator of state parks. I came over in 1983 from college with a backpack to go hike the Kalalau Trail and to go up Mauna Loa, and got sidetracked in Hana Maui for about 5 years. Just things happen, you know, when you're traveling. And I ended up taking care of MacNut orchards and coaching cross country at the high school, and I was an estate caretaker. But I also learned how to paddle canoe with the Hana Canoe Club. And one morning, they grabbed a bunch of us, and part of Kanaka Ole was putting it together, and they said, "Hey, we're going to paddle the McKenna." I'm like, "Wow, cool! From Hana Bay, I'm in, right?" Because I was like 23 years old, I could paddle all day. And so we're paddling down the shore, and there's a big storm coming behind us, and at every significant spot, Harley had us raise our paddles, and he did a pule. And I didn't know anything. I was a fresh off the boat haole, but I was like, wow, this is really great. But what hit me during that travel to McKenna, and it was to commemorate the 10-year anniversary of the disappearance of Mitchell and Helm, which I didn't know anything about. But when I pulled up at McKenna, and we had all these koa canoes and all these people, and they were chanting us in, taking us all day, I was hit with this amazing connection to both the ocean and to the landscape, and not knowing what was going on, but able to absorb and just be like this lucky guy to experience that. Set me in motion to a whole series of events that ended getting me to the state legislature, working for a Maui representative here. Then I was brought in to manage the new Na'alahele Trail and Access Program when it was created. And then basically from trail management went into state park management. But all along the way, even doing clearing land in Hana, and I built stone wall with stone masons. My foundation, I was so lucky. I was given this foundation of just working the landscape from the ground. And I've been able to carry that with me all the way up to now being an administrator. So instead of dirt trails, I make paper trails, but that foundation is still there.
Presley, can I ask you the same question? How did you find yourself in stewardship, and what are some key pivotal moments that got you there?
Well, aloha. I am currently the president for Hui Makainana o Makana of Ha'ena, Kauai. I've been serving as president for the past 8 years. What was my kuleana in taking care of Ha'ena was, and why I do feel this sense to Malama, our place, go through 2 hurricanes, and see if that doesn't wake you up. So it was my aha moment, my wake up call that we are Kanu people. Just like what Kurt was saying, we have a Kanu mentality, most of us local people, as opposed to a continental mentality. But I think, again, going through 2 hurricanes and realizing the vulnerability of the state of Hawaii, we're in a canoe in the middle of the Pacific, 2,500 miles from the nearest port. So that's what made drive me into and motivate me into doing what we do.
Yeah, it really is going to take all of us to get to a sustainable and a regenerative place. And Khaleesi, you're really involved in bringing people together. Can you just give a little bit of background about your path into stewardship and those key pivotal moments as well?
Sure. Aloha. For me was going back to the land and getting involved with farming. And that happened when my sister and I won this agricultural business plan with Kamehameha Schools. And we got land to create an educational agroforest. And then through that experience, we realized, we wanted to try to get into agritourism as an alternative source of livelihood as farmers, and quickly realized this huge gap in our industry where, it's really hard for farmers to be found, right? It was really hard for us to find customers. So what we saw was missing was this central place where a lot of our, farm-based experiences could be listed. We took it on ourselves to try and fill that gap. So my sister went into doing a baseline study of agritourism for Hawaii County, and then I took on the more technical aspect of creating this platform that's a website and an app that is a directory of farm experiences and farm information that can be discovered by the visitors.
That's really awesome. It's so great to hear about how you all have kind of found your way to where you are now. Kurt, you said you've been working with the state in DLNR and have been really behind the state reservation systems for the parks. Can you tell us about the most recent one that was put in place, and how that's informing and managing over tourism?
Well, it's interesting. The reservation system model started at Ha'ena after we had what I call the atmospheric pandemic of the floods of 2018. And the reservation system developed for Ha'ena is unique in that we had an opportunity to rebuild the parking area and shrink the patronage down. And instead of 2,000 people a day, established a limit of 900 with a lot of only 100 cars. But the reason we did that is because the Hanalei Initiative was developing a shuttle system, and the whole goal was to get all those cars off the road and try to compress that impact on Wainiha and Haena from there's people that grew up in Haena, all they knew were cars, right, and tourists, right? So the trick was, how do you develop a system that incentivizes the visitor to get out of their rental car and use the shuttle? So the only way to do that is to shrink the parking down, set up advanced reservations. When the lot is full, then you have to take the shuttle or you can't come, right? And we also did a holdback so that local residents who had been shut out of their own land for 30, 40 years based on tourism always were guaranteed a spot. So then fast forward to Wainapanapa State Park, a totally different model, because Wainapanapa was being inundated by these 25-passenger tour vans. You can't get into Hanalei because of into Haena because of the bridges, right? They're too small. But so the Hana Highway was just getting hammered, and our park was just getting consumed by visitors in these 25-passenger vans plus the independent travelers. So again, set limits, set up a place and portal for the PUC tour guys to reserve and go, and then where the people can park. And the little black sand beach at Wainapanapa was inundated with people. We've been able to start to remove that impact. So fast forward now to Diamond Head, a totally different model. For Haena and Wainapanapa, our goal was to reduce impact on the resource and the community, because they're almost identical. The Hana community and the Haena, same dynamic of just too many people going to a little park unit. So Diamond Head, it's an urbanized, park setting, but there are impacts on the residential area around as visitors try to find parking. But for the Diamond Head model, which we just launched 2 weeks ago, it's fresh off the shelf. We're still tweaking it on a daily basis, setting parameters for how many people can come in per hour by foot, by car, how many tour guides. The difference with that one, though, is the resource can handle. It was a quality issue. In 2019, during Christmas holidays, we had 6,000 people in one day at Diamond Head. And that's not an experience that any of us want to, have anybody, do when they come visit, or even locals weren't even going, right? So that model is to reduce patronage, and instead of everybody coming in the morning, stretch them out into the afternoon when it gets quieter. And everybody thinks it's super hot, but it really isn't, because the trades are usually blowing. So Haena, Wainapanapa, and Diamond Head are three distinctly different types of reservation systems. Our biggest hurdle at this point is getting the word out to the visitors. We've been turning a lot of visitors away who just don't know that they need reservations. And I was on site explaining this to them. I said, look, and some of them get a little hoo-hoo because they just came all the way to go Diamond Head. I said, we used to be an all-you-could-eat cafeteria, and we used to give our stuff away for little cost. Well, during the pandemic, we raised our rates, and we're reducing patronage. So I said, we're more of like a higher class type of experience, but the quality is going to go up, and the visitor and the residents' experience will go up. We're hoping, because regenerative tourism isn't just dealing with visitors, it's getting our local residents a place at the table as well, where they've been shut out for years because of over-tourism.
Yeah, that's so important.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also interesting that there's not one solution. It's not a one-size-fits-all. You really have to tailor it to what the community needs and what that place needs.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, you have to look at the patronage, the modes of transportation, what the attraction is. At Haena, it's KA and Kalalawan, and going on the trail at Wainapanapa, it's purely the beach, and it's a whistle stop on the way to go, out to Ohio Gulch or whatever. And Diamond Head is just one of those bucket list ones. But we've calculated, we know how long it takes to hike and come back down. But each park requires a different method of how you approach it based on what you're trying to protect and enhance.
Yeah. Well, Presley, you've seen tourism before and after at Haena. Can you tell us a little bit more about your relationship with that place and the tipping point for the community?
Good question. I'm 73 years old, and in 1959, I was 10 years old, and it was one of my most memorable trips to Haena. This was what it was like. and there was nobody on the road. My cousins and I, we would have a family reunion every year, and almost every single year we'd have a family reunion. And my cousins and I, we had the run of the road, you know. And not only we had the run of the road, but there was cattle that would walk up and down the road all day long, you know. And the fences then at that time were to keep the cattle out, not to keep the you know, encapsulate the cattle, yeah. So that's some of the things. I'm a lineal descendant of Kalalau, Ha'ena, and even Nihoa. We had that connection. It was a wonderful time growing up then, and then fast forward to 40 years later, 1999, a group of we organized with the help of Chipper Wickman, has been a really instrumental in protecting a lot of our natural resources in Ha'ena and elsewhere. But and Dr. Carlos Andrade and also one of our kapuna, Uncle Tommy Hashimoto, they had this vision that we got to do something. And this is 1999. We were probably starting to get about 2,000 visitors a day, you know, and it was starting to, as Chipper Wickman would say, you know, it was starting to get loved to death. Yeah. So we knew at that point we had to do something there. It was the invasive 90%, 90+% of everything that took over the archaeological, agricultural complex that is known as Limuhuli, was getting overgrown by invasive trees, you know, and destroying all the hard work of our kapuna. Some of those lo'i, like Kurt said, you know, 800 to 1,000 years old, you know. And so we decided at that point we're gonna, you know, we as a community, because we're gonna start taking care of our place better. There were cars starting to park all up and down the roads, and it was affecting the way of life of the people of Ha'ena. And if you put it this way, you know, just wherever you live, how would you like it if all of a sudden a couple hundred cars start showing up in your neighborhood and people walking in front of your place 7 days a week? How would you feel? And nobody told you. Nobody asked you. So that's where the community was in 1999. And with this formation of the Hui, we were able to work in collaboration with the state parks and Department of Land and Natural Resources. And at first, initially, especially with state parks, we've had a really good relationship with them. So they were allowed us to, you know, okay, you guys are not a flaky group, you know, this is a, you know, recognized group. There's people from the community that are strong members of the community. You know, we got recognized as a group, so they kind of turned us loose there in the Loy, so we were able to clear up that place. So, yeah, and
it's so weird to say we allowed you, because I don't think it's our place to allow you. I think we empowered you guys.
Yeah. So, did I kind of answer your question?
Yes, you did. That was great.
Yeah.
And speaking of like mobilizing and the process of changing norms and finding solutions, Khaleesi, as someone who's involved in the very grassroots level of stewardship, what are some of the challenges that you face relating to changing laws and land policy for agritourism, and how do you advocate for this balance between the two?
Sure. Well, I think, you know, in terms of stewardship, you know, farming and farmers, we're already by default stewards. You know, we're on the land and we're taking care of it. Some better than others, but definitely a lot better than the last 100 years of, you know, what's been happening with our sugarcane industry. But as an enterprise with Hawaii Farm Trails, you know, our mission, part of our mission is really to try to direct our visitors out to the farms as a way to take off the pressure on our natural and our cultural hotspots, like places like Haena, right? So to a place where, you know, they're set up to receive them and provide benefit, economic benefit to the farmers. At a policy level, I mean, there's a lot that needs to be changed when it comes to legislation about agritourism. You know, changes could be made to, you know, make state and county laws a lot more consistent with each other, and then among the counties as well. So like one example is hospitality on farms, you know, things like homestays and food service, like restaurants or feeding people, are not allowed on Hawaii County, but they are in Maui. So there's inconsistencies there. There's the permitting and planning process, you know, there's confusion. There needs to be a demystifying, you know, of that process. And right now, you know, there are barriers that prevent some of our smaller farmers from just getting in there, you know. So one example is needing to earn at least $10,000 as a farm business before you could even qualify to get a permit to do agritourism, right? And so those guys that have the means to go through this really confusing and potentially cost expensive process are able to get in. And then so you kind of start to see a bit of a separation between the haves and the have-nots, even within the farming community, right? And so when you see that inequality, you know, we're not really getting towards sustainability, you know, in terms of by its economic definition, which is, you know, to spread the wealth amongst everybody, you know, especially the little guys, you know, the ones that, you know, are smaller family-based farmers that, you know, the data shows, you know, at least in Hawaii County, up to 60% earn less than $10,000 from farming, right? So we see this real inequality and disparity that can be quite discouraging for the smaller farmers, which is the ones that we try to help, you know, build up their capacity. And I think that, you know, this kind of poses the perception especially to the younger folks who want to farm, that farming can be difficult, you know, and it's not lucrative. And so, yeah, those are just some of the challenges that we are uncovering, you know, as being part of this at the ground level. That gets towards, you know, the heart of regenerative tourism, right, which is to benefit all and that all can gain wealth from it. Yeah.
And that goes back to my previous comments about when is it appropriate to utilize a guest to create benefits for the host and the place. And I think agritourism really is an example of how we might better achieve that.
And I wanted to say too that, you know, part of the permitting process, right, at least for farms, is that we are able to manage this activity better, right?
Yeah.
And when the process is so cumbersome, so humbug, you know, that farmers just go ahead and do it without permitting, you know, that makes it easier or harder to manage. And we run the risk of ending up with, you know, places like Haena where folks are coming in and we're not able to kind of preserve the rural sense of place, you know. So that's
one of the problems too is the visitor is now more hungry for that rural sense of place, and places like Pololu, you know, the visitors discovered that there are, and social media is partly to blame for this, that some of these other experiences are more what they're looking for, except that the community and the resource was never set up to handle, the visitors coming in. And as they come in larger numbers, the communities are just getting saturated. And it's cool that the visitor wants these more authentic experiences, but it's like we're not ready for prime time to absorb them, right? And so it's a big transitional point. And I think it'd be awesome if more visitors wanted to do farm tours, and look at how, kalo is actually, cultivated and whatnot. But yeah, the areas were just that's not what the plan was. They were for subsistence. And now we're trying to integrate it. And the visitors, it's like we're racing the visitor to try to set up process before they come back in large numbers. Although they're back, we're dealing with it.
Which is kind of the largest challenge for our farmers is actually finding the customer and getting them to come over, come to the farm and to visit.
Yeah.
Right. So then, but then, like you said, we have to be really careful. What they need is marketing, right? But we have to be really careful about how we do that so that we don't run the risk of random people showing up in random places at the wrong times, and disturbing our, rural community and the health of our rural communities.
Well, turning back to Kurt and Presley, I just wanted to ask about the reservation systems and kind of the challenges that you've seen so far, and maybe community perception from the state perspective, and then community perception from your perspective as well, Presley. But let me turn to Kurt.
No, that's perfect. He can handle the community stuff because he's lived it. I'm the regulator person, so I'll take put on my government hat, right? But yeah, the challenges partly is just retraining the visitor industry. Like I said earlier, we're not an all-you-can-eat buffet anymore. You gotta make reservations. So part of the challenge is really just getting the word out through the various hoteliers and through the Hawaii Tourism Authority points of contact that, we're changing up our business plan. One of the things we learned during the pandemic, we did a rate increase. Our rates used to be super low. It was $1 to walk into a park and $5 to drive in, which was way below what, if you want to use market terminology, what municipal and national parks charge, like all over the United States. So we did a pivot during the pandemic, during that lull where like Diamond Head was closed for 9 months, and did a pretty robust rate increase to where now entry is $5 a person and parking is $10. It's still not a huge increase, but when you go from 1 to 5, going from 5 to 10, we're now generating some really good, serious operating income. And I do have to give a shout out to the legislature. This session, they just approved a new spending cap for us. With the money we're generating, we'll have about a $12 million budget just associated with fees that we brought in. And with all of the general funds, we have the largest operating budget that State Parks has ever had. We're at about $27 million. They gave us a whole bunch of new positions that we can fill and start to spread out on the landscape. Because part of our problem as the regulators, and this is a really, really key point, is the reservation system is only as good as the gatekeeper who checks the reservations, right? If we didn't have either staff, or in the case where we have the Hui, that we've transitioned now this management, which is a huge paradigm shift. Instead of a private sector parking company, the Hui is now managing the parking and entrance at Haena, which is total textbook regenerative tourism, because not only are they now helping us manage what was theirs to begin with, but they're collecting income, and you've employed how many people?
Yeah, that's what we're doing with our revenue that we've made this last 2 years, made a quantum jump from a total grassroots organization with an operating budget of $3,000, which we got from two fundraisers at Waipa Foundation, the Taro Festival and the Mango Festival. $3,000, we're all happy. The rest of it came from our pocket for 15, almost 20 years, all from our pocket, our Hui members. And I think from a community standpoint and the feedback that we've been getting is exactly that, you know, is we're trying to regenerative tourism for us is taking that money that we're getting, the revenue and the parking, and recycling it back into employment. That was one of the main reasons why I personally got involved with the Hui, was to hopefully to create economic opportunities for our people down there. You know, we're a real isolated community. And so it was really important that, you know, with the shuttle system, especially, and Hanalei Initiative, which is another nonprofit group that is umbrellaed on us, but actually they're the drivers. Yeah. They have amazing...
Literally, because they're driving the shuttle.
Yeah. Yeah. And they have all this data, you know, I mean, amazing data, how many people we're turning away, how many people are parking, you know, and basically we're keeping people off the road. They're not driving out there. The thing that we really want to push is having our visitors try and educate themselves when they come down there. Educate yourself about the geography. It's part of being a good visitor. Educate yourself about the places you're visiting. Understand the geographic makeup. Understanding the geological makeup, the cultural makeup, and it's part of being a good visitor no matter where you go. So and like Kurt was saying, you know, the paradigm is shifting where you're coming to our house. When you're coming to Ha'ena, you're coming to our house. And we expect a certain, you know, when you come to my house, you can, you know, there's certain house rules that we want you to follow. But we welcome everybody. We're always talking to people when we're working in the Lo'i, and people jump off the boardwalk, you know, visitors, you know, jump off in the boardwalk and jump, oh, what are you guys doing? Can we help? You know, so that's kind of our, you know, getting the visitor involved, on a one-to-one basis. But so the feedback from the community has been really, really, really good, because got less cars off the road, less people visiting the park. You know, I mean, they just got two things. You got to educate yourself when you come and visit. I think is part of being a good visitor, and you got to plan your vacations when you come, especially to Ha'ena. You got to plan your vacations, and it's happening all over the world. It's nothing. It's not a Ha'ena thing. It's not a you know, state parks thing. It's something that's happening all over the world. And people are, you know, countries, religious sites, you know, famous geological, you know, Monte Picchu, and you know, all the places, all these religious sites too. You know, they're all managing the numbers. So,
well, over-tourism it's not just here. Venice was dealing with this, as you said, Machu Picchu, and we're not doing anything that's that radically different from a global perspective, but it's new for us. And getting back to, from the state perspective as the regulator, the hardest part for us in setting up this type of system and as we move forward is, like I said, absent either us having staff or partners or a private sector company checking the front door as the bouncers, so to speak. It's been my experience, the visitors, when they're here, they will do what they want to do. And unless you're there to help guide them and ensure that they follow, you know, these new regulations, they're gonna do what they want to do. And so that's a key part, is you can set up technology, but you still need boots on the ground to ensure that everybody honors these regulations. A quick funny story about Waina Panapa. A celebrity who will go unnamed tried to get in without a reservation, and there's a set of like these 6 really tough Hara girls that were like, they're manning the front gate, right? And they're like, I'm sorry, you know, you don't have a reservation. And he's like, do you know who I am? And they go, yeah, you're the guy that doesn't have a reservation. So anyway, without saying his name, it was a titanic failure for him to get in to the park, and that's all I'm going to say. So, you know, everybody's trying to get a piece of, you know, the Rakhine to get in. Yeah.
Khaleesi, we've been talking about how the reservation system has been able to create a regenerative tourism model at Haena, and I was just wondering about some of the innovations that you are doing at Hawaii Farm Trails to advance that as well.
Sure. Yeah, so at Hawaii Farm Trails, you know, we're really a hui of farmers. You know, there's over 200 in that system, and that's just barely scratching the surface. There's over 4,000 farmers in the state. So you're just by default, you're seeing that, you know, 1 out of 40 are making it onto the platform where they actually are participating and benefiting from tourism. But then we have all these other, you know, smaller farms who are just trying to get to the point where they are viable, you know, farm agricultural businesses before even entering into hosting, right? So one of the things that we've done, one of the projects that we run is Project Kanu, which is a food tree planting project. And what that really is meant to do is to leverage our tourism dollars and bring it down to the farmer level and help them with their establishment costs in terms of just production. So basically what it is, you know, a visitor or any individual or business can sponsor trees, food trees, and seedlings, and these go to the farmers for free, and it offsets their cost of just establishing, which is something we faced ourselves when we were establishing our Ulu agroforest. It was really expensive to get really great quality seedlings that's going to help us at a commercial level. At the same time, they're benefiting from the, you know, the harvests from those crops, and then also, you know, environmentally, it's stabilizing and regenerating their soil. So it's regeneration, you know, at the farm level. And so we're really excited. We're, you know, looking to partner with what I call like the gatekeepers, you know, the ones that, you know, the transportation, the accommodation stakeholders that, you know, every visitor comes through, you know, and they kind of hold that ability to transfer some of these costs to the guests, you know, in a way that is efficient, that once they use our service, we're able to get that down directly to the farmer and help them establish their businesses, all without even having to have an on-farm experience. So we're able to scale and impact a lot more farm businesses that way, and then help and then also provide an experience for the visitor through education, right? And communicating the impact that their dollar can do, you know, can affect at the ground level with the farmers and helping with Hawaii's food security issues.
Before you were talking a little bit about how the barriers to entry into agritourism are kind of high and you have to meet that $10,000 threshold. Can you explain a little bit more about what Hawaii Farm Trails is doing as a hui to kind of address that and help farmers to get to that level as well?
Yes, sure. I mean, I think there's a great benefit in having one platform where you can hui up and then just show your presence, right? That here we are, you know, we're here and we're part of the solution, right? We can take the overflow from Haena and it's needed, and we're just redirecting that. And again, regeneratively benefiting everybody in that sense. So that is one way of helping promotion, you know, promotionally, like for farms to get more business from our visitors, they need to be seen and heard. So we help with that through different ways, like, you know, promoting their experiences, by creating a marketplace for their locally grown and crafted goods. Yeah. Yeah.
And I guess as we're wrapping up, I have one final question for you all. You know, sometimes transforming systems and landscape, especially in natural resource management, it seems slow. when it feels like that for you, what gives you hope and inspiration to keep on going?
That's a great question. I'll use a canoe metaphor because that's been kind of our theme. So in my career, I spent about 31 years at DLNR. I started in middle school, by the way. No. And I feel like, particularly at state parks, I've been steering a canoe in really tough water. I've been short paddlers. Canvas is ripped and one of my paddlers is bailing. And as I'm steering, I'm watching the rigging come loose. So it's like I've been trying to re-rig the canoe and keep things going forward at the same time, while the spectators on the side are going, go faster, because they just don't see the Yaku and the Ama unraveling in terms of the metaphor of government, right? So what gives me hope, and like I was just saying, we are the least staffed state park system in the United States. Up until this year, we had 128 people total. That includes me at the desk, right? Alaska has 160, and then you go to places like Nebraska, and they have like 800 staffers, right? So this new influx of staff that the legislature has provided us, plus the recognition that we can kind of control our own destiny, spending our income, which now finally has reached a threshold where State Park has been kind of just holding our own, and my staff, I give so much credit to the Big Island superintendents just trying to fix leaky bathrooms and, you know, potholes and empty the rubbish. But with this recognition now from the legislature and even the tourism industry that we need to reinvest into our natural and cultural capital. And I think what gives me hope is partly the fact that, you know, we have generational families at Haena that are now employed by the visitor based on these fees that we're charging, as we're doing it in Hana. And we won't be able to do it at all of our state parks, but there's several other state parks come to mind, such as Kealakekua Bay, where we have Napopo lineal descendants there. We have Hoala Kealakekua as a fledgling organization way behind the hui in terms of their capacity. But what gives me hope is there seems to be, rather than us just beefing with visitors, which I know happened when the gates opened up in 2021, but communities now stepping up and trying to work with us, knowing that government can't do it all, to help control our destiny. And, you know, what I was thinking, because I knew this question was coming, you know, I imagined like Diamond Head, where visitors are hiking up, and it's like wall-to-wall visitors, and we've now brought those numbers way down. And actually, they may be hiking up with residents too, and talking story.
Yeah.
You don't usually see that, right? It's usually just the residents go, I'm not going up there, it's too crowded. And I don't know if this has happened in Haena, but as we bring down the temperature of what the visitors do to us in our community and our natural and cultural resources, and maybe we start to mingle with them as we both recreate together. And so we reduce the tension and find that balance between what the residents and the community needs, generate that super needed, you know, critical dollar to help fund this whole mechanism. But actually, instead of having tourism be this bane of our existence, we learn to enjoy each other because we're going to bring that temperature down and a truly regenerative. It's not just the resource; it's our attitudes.
Yeah.
And as you said, you know, there's rules when you come into the house, and we got to these systems we're developing help set up those rules better, rather than just the free for all, you know, that we're used to. And so it's a race. You know, I'm desperately trying to keep the canoe on course. We got new paddlers coming in. It looks promising. It looks really promising.
Yeah, that's great. Presley, can I turn to you?
Yeah, I think given what Kurt said, you know, and it's community managed areas are it's happening all over the world, and community-based management, natural resource management. I think given the constraints that Kurt has brought up, I think communities got to step up. That's the only, you know, happy community, happy life. I just made that up. But I think, you know, again, we're here to help the state. And I think, again, if any takeaway from this for me is that, and any message I want to send is, again, it's been a story of collaboration. We've gotten a little bit of notoriety, you know, for our innovation, but to me it's just doing what seems natural to want to take care of a place, no matter what place. You love a place, nobody's stopping you from taking care of it. Yeah. And we've had a wonderful relationship with the state of Hawaii, and being a product of the 60s and 70s, there was a time I probably would have choked saying that, but you know, it's been a really wonderful experience. They're there. We're here to help. Where it's a partnership.
It is,
and,
totally.
And not only that, there's other funding assistance that's been funders like and organizers like KUA that is a wonderful organization, and it's about a story of collaboration, and my biggest motivation is every morning I start off with my mopuna, the youngest one, and that's my motivation. And just leave the place a better place than when you go. Anyway, sorry.
No, that's so important. Yeah, I think thinking about the next generation and how we can leave it better for them.
That's why we do all this.
Yeah. Really? Yeah. And Khaleesi, can I turn to you?
Sure. I mean, I'd say the same. You know, my children inspire me to keep going in this fight for the farmers. You know, we have Pacific Island heritage, you know, and in the next few decades, some of our Pacific Islands are going underwater. And so I believe that farmers are a big part of that solution, you know, and by building their capacity, we're just making sure we are all resilient in the face of all of that, right? So that inspires me to keep going and, keep fighting the good fight.
Well, thank you all for the amazing work that you're doing to make our natural resources more resilient and preserving them for generations to come. It's been really great talking with you all and getting to learn from you.
Mahalo.
Mahalo.
Yeah.
It's been an honor.
Now I'm hungry. I'm ready for some ulu.
Yeah.
Joe here with you again for the live Q&A portion of Kahuina. And with me in the studio today is Malia Sanders, just like yesterday, and the moderator from that panel, Hannah Thompson from Hawaii Green Growth. Aloha, Hannah.
Aloha.
And then via Zoom, we also have our panelists, Kurt Cottrell, Presley Wan, and Khaleesi Mosio, who are joining us via Zoom as well. Aloha, you guys. Right on. So we've got a bunch of questions coming in. For those of you on Zoom, please know that you can enter your questions into the chat function, and then we will get them, load them up, and we're going to try and answer as many as possible within the next 15 minutes. But the first one, because there's been a bunch of questions and comments about it, is for you, Kurt. Nice to see you. People have been wondering what happens with the increase in revenue generated by the state parks. Do we reinvest in that specific state park? Does it go into a general fund? Or, you know, does it benefit those communities, or does it fall into like the bigger bank?
Good question. We get asked that quite a bit. And I'll go quick because 15 minutes, that's tight. I know there's a lot of questions. The revenue we generate goes right back into our state park special fund to reinvest directly into our state park units. We don't set it up where each park that generates income, that money goes 100% back into that park, because we're a statewide system, and we have a lot of parks that will never be able to generate that kind of revenue for reinvestment. But being in the bottom 5 of funding in the United States for decades, we're just trying to catch up on all of our deferred maintenance. You know, there's a lot that needs to be fixed that we just haven't been able to get to. So quick answer, the money goes right back into the state park system. Certain parks more than others will see the benefit of the income based on what's breaking down more rapidly in terms of infrastructure and where the work needs to go.
Right on. Thank you, Kurt, for that. Question number 2, we're going to go Khaleesi first, and then we'll go to Hannah. But it's really just sort of a broad question about agritourism. What is agritourism? Why is it unique? And how can we, you know, engage the farmer in changing the visitor experience? Khaleesi.
Sure. Well, so agritourism, not agrotourism, although we do have that too, according to Kurt. Agritourism is basically, you know, experiences on a farm. It's very broad. You know, I think the concept originated from Italy, where, you know, the wineries and all that happened, and so travel and staying at farms is a big component of it, right? So there's kind of 3 different sectors: is hospitality, which is the staying and the eating, the activities, and then transportation. So that encompasses agritourism as it relates to a farm. And I think, well, and then of course it's all like centered around food, you know, and I laugh because at our country market, we have this little badge by one of our farm to table partners that says, "Food is my love language." And I think everybody can relate to it. I think it's this common love language that we all have. So when a visitor is able to come and participate with that on the farm, it's just a much more meaningful connection. And through education, we are able to tell them the whole story about Hawaii as it relates to food, the culture of farming. So it can be very, very transformative at that level when you're on the farm and your hands are in it. But the best way of knowing that is when we see repeat customers come back for it, because we know then it really impacted them at a deeper level. They have a better understanding of the care that goes into food, and then also the issues that we have here in Hawaii with sustainability and food security.
Wow, that's great. And I guess I'm going to ask the follow-up question: how many, you know, what percentage of our repeat visitors do you think, for you?
I mean, that's a good question. I'd have to ask my sister. She knows that statistic better than me. I'm not sure exactly. Maybe, I don't want to throw out any numbers. But that is the demographic that we try to target. You know, the repeat visitors, both at a state level, but also for us as farmers.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. We're gonna find out. We're gonna find out from your sister. Hannah.
Yeah, I mean, Khaleesi really covered it, but what agritourism essentially can do for local farmers is inviting folks to their farm and using the visitor as a mechanism for sustaining local food production. Very short answer. Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. Okay. We've got another question coming in. It's being typed right now. So we're gonna, let's see. Okay, I'm not sure who this is coming from in Zoom, but the question is, what kind of advice do you have to get other communities, so communities that are currently not involved, whether that's individuals, families, or you know, entire communities, what advice do we have to get them involved in natural resource management and positively affecting our communities? And we kind of spoke to this yesterday. It's so easy to jump on social media and comment without finding, you know, a productive means of contribution. So maybe we can kind of, I'd love to go around. I think all of us, all of you would have some good things. What do you see as getting involved? Because we all know sometimes the squeaky wheel gets the grease. you know, and so people that complain, their issues get dealt with. But what's the process for you guys? And Presley, we haven't heard from you yet. I'd love to start with you.
Yeah. Well, the answer that comes to my mind, and one of the solutions is I was at my friend's house one day, and we were talking a serious subject, and over a couple of Frosties, and he said, you know, we were talking about, you know, some pretty heavy stuff, and he goes, you know, Presley, there's two kind of people in the world. There's the doers and the talkers. Who are you gonna be? So, you know, you got to do it. You just got to do it. You just got to organize yourself. I don't know about social media. That's out of my realm, but, you know, it was just the community itself that organized itself. And to have any kind of success, it's got to be, no matter what, you know, we do a lot of work with a lot of scientific communities, a lot of all kind of different entities that are interested in what we're doing in Haena, but it all comes back down to that same question: what do you attribute your successful to? And it's the community. You got to organize yourself, and there's no way around it than communication and just having a conversation with your neighbor and organizing. So that's my simple answer.
Kurt, I'm going to go to you next, because sometimes people feel really hesitant about reaching out to governmental agencies, you know, calling them up. They just don't know what to do, right? There's a barrier there, right? But can they do that? How do they do that? How can people get involved in that way with the state parks?
Good segue. And Presley, you forgot to mention that it takes a couple of Frosties during the discussion when you're doing the community building. But there's two ways, and I understand we're intimidating as government. People don't understand how to, you know, difference between state, county, and federal sometimes. But the quick answer for the Haena model, unfortunately, it requires a little bit of legal background creativity, like a 501c3. We can't just do any kind with a community group and where there's large sums of money. We have this fiduciary and legal responsibility. The community group has to form some kind of a legal entity, like they've done at Haena, where they redid their 501c3 bylaws to go from terolo'i, cultivation and restoration, to also visitor management, right? So that their nonprofit matches the mission. Now, we have about 30 curatorships throughout the state where people can just come and help us. And we always encourage community groups that want to go and help us restore the Aina or the feature or wherever that's in their community. That's easy. That's a 5-year agreement. We go to our land board, we bang it out. Insurance is usually involved, but those are the two pathways. Form a 501c3, incorporate, especially if money is going to move through the system. Then there has to be a good set of checks and balances. And then in regards to just stewardship, just approach us. You know, we're easy to get to at state parks. If you have a group of people and you want to go out and just go provide stewardship, that's the easy part.
Khaleesi, any thoughts on that?
On how to be involved with?
Yeah, how to be involved. I mean, obviously you are, but you know, if you don't have advice for other people, just, you know, how did you get involved? What was the spark?
Oh, yeah. I mean, as a farmer, we're living it. You know, our challenges, I understand the challenges firsthand. Farming myself, I mean, like just being able to afford seedlings, being able to fence my farm, you know, there's these financial challenges that farmers have to face, and it's much more difficult to overcome when you're at a small scale level, which the majority of farms in Hawaii are. But, you know, I mean, like besides the need to market themselves, which is a really big need for farmers, it's really expensive to market yourself to the tourism industry. And so farmers, but also small businesses really suffer because they cannot like be on that bring themselves to the table like everybody else who's able to afford marketing themselves. But second to that is labor for the farmers. You know, they need that help because labor is one of the highest costs to generate food on the farm. And so the ability to have that agritourism that allows for farm stays, you know, this is also like a legislative challenge, can be super helpful. And so being involved in that way for just a layperson would be wonderful. And I think most farmers are welcoming of that. But I really think that the onus is on our industry partners in the tourism sector to really take it on themselves to incorporate agritourism, or, you know, those who advocate for them into their sustainability plans and goals.
Right on. Awesome. I think we have about 3 minutes left in this Q&A section. So what I'd like to do, because we have 5 panelists, you guys are my panelists now, maybe some closing thoughts on basically whether it's addressing that earlier, you know, question about how do we get involved, or more importantly, what can we do as individuals, as communities, to better the place, to be better stewards, whether it's of our little bubble or of the bigger bubble. And we'll start with you, Anna.
Yeah, so going back to your first question, like what can people do to get involved in stewardship? The Aloha Plus Challenge dashboard has a community calendar where organizations can upload events if they want the community to come out and participate in their stewardship, or you can find events and sign up on the website directly. So that's one just very easy, actionable step that people can take. But I think moving forward, it's going to take all of us, and just never underestimating the power of community and having a network, but also common values and aligning those values to an end goal, which we all want is a more resilient, sustainable Hawaii.
Oh, well, easy. Malia?
Going off of what Hannah has shared, I think seeing organizations like Uncle Presley's connecting with the DLNR and working on projects like that really gives me hope that there are other community groups out there that are kind of just wanting to see how someone else has done it and maybe let that inspire them. And so for me, that is what really gives me hope, is I know there are many, many community organizations out there doing stuff on the Aina, on the land. And I think when that collaboration comes together, it becomes such a beautiful thing, but it's also a thing that gives hope to so many other people. Mahalo.
And then I'm going to pass it back, and I like the order we had there, but we're going to go reverse this time. So any closing thoughts on, you know, how to get involved, what we can do to be better stewards from Khaleesi, Kurt, and Uncle Presley, and Big West?
Sure. I mean, you know, I think there was a question that was posed there about how about the farmers who don't necessarily want to engage in tourism, but they should be able to share in the wealth equitably. That's what is the basis for sustainability. I think that, I mean, that's how we try to address that with our project Kanu. That's what it's called. And it's a way to just get that financial help down directly to the farmer, even if they don't want to engage in direct tourism activities. So in the end, they are also able to share the wealth from our tourism industry. And mahalo, Naha, for allowing me to be part of this panel. It's been great.
Yeah, aloha. I just wanted to touch a little bit on what Hannah had to say, where she kind of she mentioned like values, you know, and one of our main values as Kanaka Maole is ho'okipa. You know, we're welcoming people. We love everybody. And I'm on like yesterday, I was on working in the taro patch, and you know, inadvertently we have exchanges with people, visitors, and so, we're just, we're just welcoming people, and it's just a value that we were brought up with, and we as a Hui, we enjoy the exchanges with our visitors also. I don't want to give them a bad, any kind of a bad connotation, but I just want to thank you for allowing us to have this opportunity to tell a little bit about what we're doing in Ha'ena. And I'd just like to make a shout out to Sue Kanoho, who's been also a representative, a strong advocate for tourism and responsible tourism here on Kauai. So mahalo for this opportunity.
I just want to say thank you. Mahalo for, this has been a great discussion. It really does give me hope, learning about the Farm Trail Initiative, and we're engaged at state parks and at DLNR. It's not just us at parks, Division of Aquatic Resources needs help for the marine environment. Our Na'alahele program needs help for the trails, right? We can offer some opportunities at state parks, but keep in mind, it's not always about the money and the income. It's about putting back in. And I understand everybody has day jobs, so it's tough for the community, and we totally respect that. But this has been extraordinarily a big privilege, and I just want to thank you guys. Truly.
Thank you, Khaleesi, Kurt, and Presley for jumping back on with us today. Of course, Hannah, thank you so much for being here. And I'm going to pass it back over to Hi'ilani Shibata for this next section. Mahalo, you guys.
Mahalo nui to all of you for those great questions and for sharing your mana'o with us about the creative ways in which technology is being incorporated in managing tourism hotspots and showcasing community-led organizations who are engaged in Ma'alama Aina to offer examples of how community groups are helping the industry move towards more of a positive global existence. Our next speaker is Kalani Ka'ana'ana, Chief Brand Officer of the Hawaii Tourism Authority. His kuleana is to ensure that in the pursuit of regenerative tourism and in our message to the world, that our alo reflects the priorities, aspirations, and realities of our homeland, our velo. The investment in nurturing these priorities and aspirations are especially important to the needs of our communities as articulated in the Destination Management Action Plans.
Aloha mai kākou, o wau na ho'i o Kalani Ka'ana'ana, o wau ka luna alo velo no ka Hawaii Tourism Authority. I'm Kalani Ka'ana'ana, Chief Brand Officer at the Hawaii Tourism Authority. Talking to you today from beautiful Waikiki. It's a pleasure. My role at HTA includes 4 pillars. The first is our natural resources, our aina, our kai, all of that good stuff. Our Native Hawaiian culture programs, community programs, and brand marketing programs. And really, how do I bring those 4 pillars together in a way that is cohesive and brings all of that energy and focus toward improving a couple of things. First and foremost, our quality of life as Kama'aina in this place that we get to call home, its protection of our communities, and then also the experience that visitors have and what kind of experiences they're able to go see and do and how they go about that. And so really I'm excited about being able to bring the 4 pillars together in my work as the Chief Brand Officer at the Hawaii Tourism Authority. Today here at Kahuina, we hear from panels on a number of different subjects that range everything from Olelo Hawaii, our language of comfort in our home here in Hawaii, but also to our natural resources and other topics. And I'm so grateful to the Native Hawaiian Hospitality Association for bringing Kahuina together, bringing these conversations to the fore, and really giving us an opportunity to delve deeply into these important subjects. When I think about the vision that we have at the Hawaii Tourism Authority for regenerative tourism, it really is this idea of holistic destination management, that we no longer can focus on just the economic outcomes of tourism. We need to think about beyond that, holistically, all of the impacts on traffic, our natural environment, et cetera. And so we're excited to have these conversations today. You know, the conversation we just left around natural resource management and transitioning into this one about Olelo Hawaii is really a unique transition for me personally. How do we unlock a Hawaiian worldview? And that's Maka Olelo Hawaii. And through Hawaiian language, we're able to see the world and the issues before us in a different lens. And I think it's really important that we explore that indigenous viewpoint, both in our natural resource management, but also in broader tourism issues. So I'm really grateful to both panels for the talks today. Today at Kahuina, I think we have a collective call to action, and that call to action that's been discussed over and over and over again is Malama Hawaii and Malama Ku'uhome. How do we care for our beloved home, and what steps can we take as individuals to make this world a better place, and how do we care for one another? How do we care for our communities? How do we care for our natural resources, our Olelo Hawaii, of course? But actually, how do you then, as an individual, impact the businesses you're at and the roles that you're in, whatever industry it may be, whether you're in ground transportation or hospitality more generally. I think about insurance, I think about natural resource managers that are in the Kuahivi and that are doing this work up there. How do we all collectively think about Malama Hawaii? And how do we make that a part of all of the decisions we make, both at home, personally, and in work in our roles as leaders? So my call to action today to everyone here attending Kahuina is Malama Hawaii. Malama Hawaii, how do we do that? How do we make sure that we focus on investing in what makes Hawaii a unique place to live, call home, and to visit? Mahalo again to the Native Hawaiian Hospitality Association for bringing us together at Kahuina this year. And we're so grateful for the ongoing partnership of over 2 decades with NAHA and the HTA. From the bottom of my heart, I'd really like to thank each of you for attending today and making the time. We know everybody's busy. There are so many things going on, so much work to be done, but your presence here today is really what's going to help us collectively move together and to address these challenges in our communities. Mahalo everyone for joining us. Aloha.
Mai ka piko ana o ka la I hae ai kona velona I lehua. Ola Hawaii, ka olelo makuahine o ka aina. From the rising of the sun in Haʻehaʻe to where it sets in Lehua, Hawaii thrives on the mother tongue of this aina, Olelo Hawaii. While we celebrate Mahina Olelo Hawaii every February, it is certainly not enough time to truly normalize the use of Olelo Hawaii in our communities, in our workplace, and beyond. However, within this challenge lies an opportunity. For the first time in Kahuina history, NAHA will be sharing a panel executed purely in Olelo Hawaii. For many in our audience, this may be the first time that they will continuously hear Olelo Hawaii spoken for more than just a few minutes. For NAHA, the resilience of our language is also intrinsically tied to its use in the visitor industry, and therefore, we have undertaken this panel in its purest form. Subtitles will be provided in English, and we will utilize technology to connect all of us together. Our language truly lives when we insist on speaking continuously and ask for your kokua to further our efforts towards the normalization of the Hawaiian language. For those who are not fluent, we encourage you to follow along in the conversation with us using the subtitles and hope that you will continue your education in Olelo Hawaii by checking out some of our fundamental language resources available on naha.com. In this panel, we will discuss how technology has accelerated efforts to grow the community of Hawaiian language speakers, including those within the visitor industry. We will discuss the utility of Hawaiian language today and how we continue to work on building a thriving network of Hawaiian language speakers to support our desires for Hawaiian language revitalization and normalization. We will be exploring in the conversation the nexus for practical application in the visitor industry and how language is being used on the world stage. Leading us in this conversation is Kuanoni Kaniaupio Crozier, a team member from the Olelo Bar at Aulani, a Disney resort and spa.
Pilina aloha mai kākou, mai ka lā puka I hae a velo I ka mole ole wole hua, aloha nui loa kākou. Ua uno o Kuanoni Kaniaupio Crozier, he haumana Olelo Hawaii wau, mai ka punana leo, nā kula kaiapuni a hiki ho'i ke kula nui o Hawaii mā noa, malalo ka malu o ka waihu e lani. I ke manawa hana wau ma ka hokele o Aulani, ma ka moku o hono uli uli, ma ka lumi olelo. I keia la e ia wau I helu moa nei I ka lai o ka uluniu. E kama ilio ana me keia mau loea o ka enehana a me ka olelo Hawaii. E wala au no ka ho'okuluma I ana o ka olelo Hawaii ma ka pae aina nei. Nui ko hau oli keia la e ho'olau na mai I keia wahine, ui, a olu ho'i e noho mai nei ma ko'u au. He luna hope no Hawaii ulu, he haumana o ka olelo Hawaii. Ai keia manawa he kumu, ma ke kula ki'e o Molokai, A ma ko'u au ke kahi, ke ia alakai hano o ka enehana o Hawaii nei, Ko mako ka ano kia mana'o he me'e paha o ka enehana ma ka ho'okumu ana I nā papahana he nui ma ka olelo Hawaii. I ho'ohana nui ia I keia la. I keia manawa he kumu ʻoe, ma ke kula nui o Hawaii ma Maui. Ai, ke kāko'o nei ʻoe I ka IHM, ʻoia ho'i ka
Institute of Hawaiian Music.
Ka Institute of Hawaiian Music, Ano leila mahalo nui a olua no ka hele ana mai I keia la. Nui ko'u hoi e kama ilio pū kākou no ka enehana a me ka ho'okuluma olelo Hawaii. Aloha.
Mahalo ke kona ana mai.
Mahalo ko olua hele ana mai keia la. O ke kumu nui o ko kākou hui ana I keia la, oia ho'i ka wala'au ana no ka ho'okuluma I ana o ka olelo Hawaii ma o ka ho'opuka ana o na ano enehana like ʻole. Aka mamua o ke kamaʻilio ana no ia ho'okuluma ana, mamake wau e kamaʻilio no ke a'o ana I ka olelo Hawaii. Maopopo iaʻu nui nā ala e a'apo I ka olelo Hawaii I keia la. I keia au e holo nei. No leila, hiki paha ia ʻolua ke wehewehe mai, mo'olelo mai no ke a'o ana I ka olelo Hawaii? Pehea?
Ia ʻoe paha ka mua. Ia ʻoe. O kou I ka mua.
Well, ulu ka hoihoi I loko o e a'o I ka olelo Hawaii ma mole o ka ohana ma ka himeni a ho'okani pila no na himeni Hawaii. Ike wau a'ole I pa'apono ko olelo, hema ko olelo, no laila komo wau I ka papa ahi ma ke kula nui o Hawaii ma Maui.
Ma ka papa ahi?
Ma ka papa ahi I ho'omaka ai me kumu Hokalani Holt. A laila pi'i ai ka hoihoi komo wau I nā papa ma'amau o ke kula nui me ki Ope Raymond. Hele ia na papa olelo Hawaii e lua makahiki. A laila, wana e mako ka ohana I Hilo a komo wau I nā papa ma ka makuna ha'awina Hawaii ma Hilo I a wā I kia manawa kapa'i o ka hako ula o ke Elekolani.
Ai, mamua loa ho'i ke la,
Mamu, ai.
O ka lilo, o ka ho'ano hou ia no ke nā kula pau,
Ai. So, ka makahiki umikuma iwa, kana iwa kumaha ia I ne'e ai mako I Hilo. Ua pau ka ke kekele be'a, kekele mu'a ma laila. Hele wau I Aotearoa no ka ke kekele kauka ma ka puolo. Ma hope pono o ka pa'a anau I kekele ho'i wau I Maui no ki Alaka'i ani ki a papahana puolo ma ke kula nui o Hawaii ma.
No lila, o ke a'o ana I ka olelo Hawaii wa o oe mana moku puni like ole, A ole ma ho'okahi wahi a ka hele oe I Maui, I Hawaii.
I Maui mako I noho ana I a wā. E lua wale no makahiki o ka olelo Hawaii ma ke kula nui I a wā. A ole hiki ke a'o ho'okeleka I ike. No laila ua hapai I ka mana'o e hele I Manoa paha, e hele I Hilo. A ka mamole o ko'u kama'aina I ko Hilo, o Kiki ka wai ai'a. Ua ne'e o ia mai Maui I Hilo no ka kialaka'i ani ka papa kahua Vaiola. A laila, kelepona mai o ia me ka mana'o, hele paha o I Hilo, imi ke kekele a kokua ia mako I ke ao enehana.
Ai.
No laila, o ia ka ho'omaka ana.
Hoia hoi ka o maka ana. A hele oe I hilo a maleila oe I kokua ia lako e ho'omohala I kekahi mau mea hoa'e, ea? A pehea oe a oi ka olelo Hawai'i?
No, ua ho'okomo ka mau makua ia'u ma ka papa hana o ka punana leo. O ka upapa ka papa alaka'i ma Moloka'i. No leila ho'okumu ia ke la papa hana o ka
punana leo Moloka'i?
O ia, o mākou ka papa mua ma leila.
No leila, ua ano like ho I kaua ea, hele kaua I ka punana leo.
O ia no.
A leila ke heaha paha ma hope pono.
O ke kaiapuni no, komo koke I ke kaiapuni a I ka papa e ono. Ha'alele I ke kaiapuni, pi'i ia e iuka ne'i I kapa alama, no ke kahi mo makahiki. Puka mai ke la kula mai komo koke I manoa. A ma leila wau I a'o malalo ka malu o ka waihuelani ke kahi. A komo I ka papahana o ka ho'okula iwi, ka imi ana I ka palapala a'o. E lilo I ka kumu, ma lalo o ka papahana ho'ona awao. A e wau I keia maula. A ma leila wau I hui ai me ka ukumu o Puakea Nobu Maia. Puakea Nobu Maia, ka mai kumu.
Ai, ua kaulana kona inoa, ua lava paha o Puakea. O ane kala Puakea paha, ka o Puakea ua ike.
O Puakea.
Ua ike ia.
O ia no a eia wau malalo o kona malu I kia maula no Awaiulu. No leila, he kumu mauloa o ia no.
Mai hea mai ke ia I ini paha I loko o e a o I ka olelo Hawai'i. Ia o lua ke ia ni nau.
Mai nā makua mai paha, mai ke nohi mai, ma ka punana. Pai nui ia e komo I ke kula, a leila ma leila. Ike wau I ka hoi o nā kupuna, nā makua I hiki ole ke kama I lio ma ka olelo Hawai'i. Pai mau ia wau, holomua, ho'omau ki ano hana. Komo ke la ano ha'aheo I loko o o'u. Ke la puna me oe, me nā haumana kaiapuni like ole ea. He ha'aheo a he kule ana ia. No kākou, e awamo pono e ano leila. Me he mea la.
Oi paha ke kahi manao nui o keia panela. Oi hoi ke kule ana o ka ho'okuluma hou ia ana o ka olelo Hawai'i.
O ia no.
O iai, ua makana ia maila ke ia aloha a me ke ia ha'aheo no ka po'e olelo Hawai'i. No ka olelo Hawai'i, a me ka ike Hawai'i, a me ka ha'aheo I ka hana nui o ko kākou po'e kupuna I ka mālama ana I ka olelo Hawai'i no kākou. A pehea ho'omana'o oi ke kahi manawa I kupu maila ka i'ini I loko o e holomua e ho'okā'oi paha I ka olelo Hawai'i I kou wā o pio paha, kou wā makua.
Ole ma ka wā o pio. Mai ia wāno a kahia male a hanau ia ka o kaikamahine. Ia wā, well, he keke kane ka o ke kahi a ole wau I hau ole loa I ke ano o ka kona ho'ona awao ia ma ke kula ma'amau. A laila mamole o ke komo ana I ke la papa ma ke kula nui, ke la papa ahi. A laila noi ia wau e komo ma ke ano he kumu kokua ma ka punana leo. A laila ko o wā o pio o hoi punana leo. A ole wau ma Hawaii nei ia wā. A ka launa wau me ka poe ike wau I ke ano o ko lākou kupa'a. Ma hope o ka olelo Hawaii a ka ke kauka'i I ka hiki ke a'o I na keiki mau ko olelo Hawaii. A e mākaukau ana lākou no ko lākou wā makua ma hope aku.
A pehea ua maha oi ke aho ana ia manawa o ke kokua ana aku ma ka punana leo.
E lua wale no mahina o ka o ana ma ka papa a kono ia wau e hele a kokua. No laila ano makau. Ke la ano.
Ke la ano paha ia maula. Ia mea like me ka o mau makua.
Aka ike wau, he mau keiki ke ia I na hema ka o ho'opuka ani ko olelo I poina koke ia.
Ai. A holo mua. Oia ke ano o ke keiki ia. Oia ke ano ke keiki. Holo mua lako a ohe o lako makau. A hea lako hopo I ka pololei a me ka pololei ole. A ole like me ka po'e makua ea.
Ole lako I loiloi ana I ka pilino olelo.
Ai. A ole lako nā helu I ka lalani olelo a pau ea. A ka ma ke kahi ano no'o wau o ke kuluma o ka olelo. Aino ke kuluma o ka olelo Hawaii I ka makaukau. E lilo, e hoi hou I ke ano o ke keiki. Ke ano o ke aloha I ka walaau, I ke kama ilio,
hopo ole, yeah.
Ai, me ka hopo ole, yeah. No ila pehea ko ka hele kula ana ma ke kula kaiapuni.
Mai kai, a he o u hopo I ka u o puka wale ana I ka olelo ho puka wau I ka polole ka hema paha, ale wau I ike. Me mea la hema lele ka u olelo ia u iho.
Ai, a ma ke kahi ano, ai ke kahi mauhu olelo no ka poe kaiapuni wale no. A he, ale wau lohe I ka hopuna olelo o ki tuko ma waho aku o na hoa kaiapuni paha, ea? Ai, aka no'o wau o ke kaiapuni, o ia ke kahi po'aia pili I laha ka olelo, ea? I kuluma ai ka olelo. No leila, pehea paha ai, pehea I kuluma ai ka olelo I kou ola I keia manawa. O ia ke kahi ninau houa'e. O e ninau paha I olua.
Ia'u paha. Ia oi e no'o.
He ninau nui. O iai, maupopo ia'u kuluma paha ma ka hele ana I ka hana, ma ka ohana paha ke kahi, ia? Aka mahea paha I kuluma ole ai ma mua o kou koho ana e ho'okuluma I ka olelo ma ia wahi. Ma ka enehana paha? No ka mea, o ka enehana, a'ole paha a'ole kama'aina paha kākou a pau I nā hua olelo me nā mana'o a pau ka enehana. Yeah?
Well, ma ku'u wā I ho'omaka ai I kia huaka'i. O mamua ke la wā, ua komo wau I ke au enehana ho'omaka wau e a'u I ka haku polo kalamu ma ke kahi ano pai ha'a. Ho'okumu wau I ke kahi kikowaina lawe he kapaie I wahe computer bulletin board service. No ka hiki ke ho'una I ka leka I nā hoa ma ke kamipiula. A laila ma ke hiki ana aku I ka pai kula nui ho'omaka wau e wala'au me ka po'e ma ka papahana kaiapuni ma paia ma ka punana leo. Ho'okolohua wau me lākou I ka ho'ohana ana I ka olelo Hawaii ma ia enehana. Ole hiki ke ho'ohana I ko kina me ke kahako no laila no I wau no ke kumu o ia pilikia. Imi I ka pane pehea la e ho'ohana ai I ia mau mea ma ke keleka ike. No laila oe ka ho'omaka loa ana o ko'u hoi I ke kumuhana pehea e ho'ohana ia ai. Ia wā a'ole I lohi ia kainoa internet. A'ole I loa. No laila ua ho'omaka ma kela pai o ka ho'okolohua. Me ka ninau, he aka waiwai o kia hana, pehea e koku ai kia enehana I ka ho'ola hou ana I ko olelo Hawaii. No laila, ano ne'e li'i mākou holomua I ka hiki ke kiko, ke pa'i I ko olelo Hawaii me ka maikai hiki ke ho'uni I ka leka wila. Oia ka ho'omaka ana, ke kukulu ana I na mea hana. Na kumu waiwai e pono ai.
E ho'oholomua I ka hana.
Polole.
A ma leila mai, ko'u mana'o I kupu mai ai ke kahi mau ano polo kalamua enehana Hawaii ea. O awai ulu paha ke kahi. Ma ka no'o ana I ka mea I pono I ke kai ulu o lelo Hawaii. Hea me kau mau hana, o ia ka ho'omaka ana I ke kahi enehana, a leila ka ha'awi ana, ka noi koku aku I ke kahi ea.
O ka ma'amau o ka mako hana mua ka no'o ana he aka me e pono ai no ka ho'oholomua ana I ke aukahi ho'olo o lalo Hawaii. No laila, ma mua iki o ko na e ana I hilo no mako ano li'i na kula kaiapuni ia wā he kanakolu kanaha paha haumana e homo ana I ka papahana I kela me kia kula pehea e ho'onui ai I ko lākou kaiulu o lalo Hawaii. No laila, o ia ka, ko'o wā e ho'oholo ana I keia kikowaina kapi o Maui Link. Ua ike mākou pehea e ho'ololi I ai ke enehana unuhi ia na mea pau ki kikowaina na papakoho, na olalo a'o, na pahu a'o. Na mea pau I ike ia I loko kia kiko waina aia ma ko olelo Hawaii.
O kia kiko waina, he kiko waina punai vele, ea?
Kiko waina punai vele.
No leila kau oi ka punai vele a leila ike ia keia kiko waina. E like me ke kau ana I ke kahi mea.
Holole, ko ia ko ho'ohana ano ki kahi polo kalamu kui ko wā. Oli I loa ana polo kalamu kele punai vele. I like me ke safari, explore ke la wā. O ke kahi pilikia ma ia wā a kahi a ho'omaka ka ho'okui ana I na kula kaia puni I ka punai vele puni honua. A ole I loa, no laila, aia no I noho ana ke kiko waina nani ma hilo, ai kali ana mako I ka ho'okui ia o na kula I hiki ai na keiki me na kumu ke a ho'ohana I kela e ne hana.
Maupopo ia kako a o he Wi-Fi, ea?
Ai, he wā.
A ole holo, ea?
He wā pa a kiki loa ia ka. Ua hiki aku I kela pahu hopu a ho'okui ia na kula pau ho'omaka a laila ike na keiki. O, loa na keiki e a I hiki ke kuka ho'ohani ka laina kole o I ka text chat ke ano. Mina keiki mana mokupuni le ke ole. No laila, like me ka ui ho'omaka ai, imi ia ke ala e kokua I ka enehana. A ole e koho vale aku I ka enehana me ka olalo. Hiki ka hana I ke ia. No mua hea ka waiwai no ke mea ole nui e hiki ke hana I ke mauhana pona I koho pono I ka papahana e awa mo ia na ka pono o ka papahana.
A pehea, hiki pahi oi ke vehe mai I ka ho'olua ke pala au mai no ka waiwai o ka po'aia pili o lelo Hawaii ma ke a'o ana I ka o lelo Hawaii. O ia ho'i ka e like me ka hele ana I ke kula kaiapuni ea, nui na hoe o lelo Hawaii ana, ma ka enehana nui ka po'e kamaili o ai, ea?
O he wā hou ke ia no ke a'o o lelo ma ka enehana. A mamoli paha o ka laha o ke ia mai, lo ka po'e noho nani ana makahale, he aka o e hana o ea o paha wau I o lalo hou. No laila ho'omaka e puka mai kia mo enehana hou e kako o ana I ka po'e e make ana I na ano o lalo like ole. No ua ho'omaka wau I kia o ni ko te reo Māori. Maka ho'omaka ana o ke ia wā. A kako o nui ia wau I ka enehana I kukulu ia no ka pono o ka po'e. Na ano enehana I loa ole ma ko'u wā e ho'omaka ana, nani ka hana. No laila, o ka mea nui ke hiki ke ho'opuka ia ko o lalo. A ma laila a ole no I like kai kaika o ka enehana. Hiki ke kukua I ka helu, ka ho'olohe, ke kākau ana, a ka o ka ho'opuka ana I ko olalo ke kuka pū ana me ke kahi. Ai ka ika Zoom hiki ke hui me nā kānaka o olalo pū me lākou, a ka he ala wali no ke la, a ole he enehana I kākau ana I ke la.
Ai, a ole maka helu wale no, ea? A ka maka olelo kanaka ke kahi, ea? Ho'omena o wau maka wā, ma keia wā o ka mai ahulau, ua kupu mai ka mai, a ole keia mahina olelo Hawaii kune, a ka mamua no, ma ka mahina olelo Hawaii, ho'okumu ia o Clubhouse, ka ma'aina paha oko, a he ano wahi enehana e kamaili o ai. E like me keia, a ka aino kāko ma ke kelepona, a hiki no ke kono I ke kahi ka auai, a leila kaula ko I ka auai, a leila hiki ke wala au pū ma keia lumi. A nui na mea I ano wala au ia, a ka hoi no ka mea, a ole hoi ka po'e a pau I nā mea a pau. O au hoi wau I ka mea ai, a oia ka uhana ea, hoi wau I ka mea ai, no leila kamaili o ana wau ma ka olelo Hawaii no ka mea ai. A o ke kai aku no ka hana hau ki paha, ea? No leila, mamake wau e kamaili o I ki paha kako no ka ho'okuluma ana I mea ai. Ka olelo Hawaii ma no ka hana hau ki paha, hiki paha ia oi ke kamaili o mai no kau pa'ani. Mamake wau e kamaili o I ki paha kako.
Ua lohe wau a ole na e wau I ho'ohana I ke la pa'ani Wordle I puka mai I ke la makahiki aku nei. Ike wau he mana o ka Wordle maka olelo Māori. No laila ho'omaka wau I kapa I o panga.
Kama'aina oi, ika wordle.
Ole, nane.
Pela kako apau I kama ili I kama'aina I ka wordle. A ole no wordle ya aka no huli hua.
Ole vai pa'ani mua ia wordle aka mamuli o ko'u ike ane I kela kahana kela kanaka ma'o te aroa I ka haku ane ia panga. Ia wano wa lekuila mai o Noelani Arista ia'u. Iko o lalo ua ho'omakaukau kekahi kanaka I kia pu'ulu code open source ke ano I hiki a ma'alahi ka ho'omakaukau ana I kekahi pa'ani I ano like kona ano me Wordle. A hiki ke hana ia mana ano o lalo like ole.
No ka mea he open source.
He open source no laila.
O ka open source, o ia ka mea ka ana like ia I me ka manuahi ea ma vaino na kanaka a pau.
Kolole.
No leila, ki'i paha oi ke la kumu vai open source a ho ano.
Yeah, well, ki'i wau I ke la he kalana he ano o pu'u code.
Ai.
Nana ia ano ma'alahi ke hiki paha ke hu'upuka ia kekahi mana maka olelo Hawaii. Aia o kekahi papa hu'olelo o na hu'olelo I loko na puke wehe like ole. Vai ia ho'oka'ina I mua ia ma ka pine o ka ho'ohana ia o ka olelo mananu pepa.
What no I ka ho'oka'ina ana.
Ai, I ma'alahi na hu'olelo ke ano laha kia hu'olelo laha kia. Alaila I ka hala ano na la, na pule, na mahina. Ho'omaka I pa'akiki ka hu'olelo.
Wa ma'alahi na mea mua ka aua paha alaila wa pa'akiki meila ea. Oia no ho'olale he pa'ani ea.
Ai, alaila vai ho ia ke la mau hu'olelo. Imi ia na hu'olelo I loa e 5 wale no huapalapala. Alaila ho'omaka wau I ho'okolo hui ke ano ma'alahi ka hana. No laila mai ke ki'i mua ana I ke la pu'ulu code ai ka puka ana o ka huli hua ho'okahi pule me ka hapa paha ka lo'ihi.
Ano viki ko ia? Eleu, naka eleu. Miki.
Well, mamuli o ka ho'omakaukau pono ia o ke la code I hiki ma'alahi ka ho'olole ana, ka ho'opili kino ana I no hu'olelo no laila nui ko o mahalo I ke la kanaka nane I ho'omakaukau. Aka o mamuli o kona ana open source I kia manawa ka ui hanai e noho laha na makapune vele I na makemake ki kahi kanaka e haku I mea ho no ka olelo Kamoa, no ka olelo polopola hiki.
Ma ke kahi ano o ka open source, oia ke kahi hana a kako e hana ana ma ke kahi ulu olelo Hawaii. Oia ke kahi ano hana a wai ulu ke kahi. Oia ka I ka ho'okohu ana ea I keia mau mea I hiki ke open source I aku ka ana like manuahi ea I keia mau ano polo kalamu ea e hiki ke ho'omohala hou ia ke kahi pa'ani paha, ke kahi ha'awina ea. Ua ike paha oi I ke kahi olohe paha oi na mo'olelo o ka hopena o keia ka ana like ana?
I ke kahi mahina aku nei paha, ke kahi ua malama ia ke kahi mau halawai ma ka Zoom e kono ana I na ano kanaka a pau e komo I kia papahana o ki papa. O mamua, hai mo'olelo paha wai no ka mana'o kupanaha. O ke kumu me kana pakana me nā makua. Kapa mako ma awai ulu ia lawa o nā makua. Ka makua kane o puakea, o ka makua hine o ana ke kau'i saidudua. Nā lawa, nā mana o kupa ia naha, nā mana o like ole a kupu mai ka mana o a nā mako ho'oholo. No laila he ohana mako o ai ulu ma nā pai aina like o ma nā mokupuni like ole o Hawaii. A pelapu no me Aotearoa ma ke kahi wā. Laila, ua kono ia mako a pau, koma ma kia papahana, ua hoi la ua e a'o ia mako ka olelo, a me ka mo'olelo Hawaii. E ana ka mea, ke a'o wale ana I ka olelo, no, a hala paha ke kahi mahele o ka mo'olelo, me he mea la he hapa wale no paha ka ike au ike mai e. Alo leila, noho pū, nā haumana me nā kumu me nā makua o I kia mau ike like ole. Ua ho'ona ia makua po pa'ani ma ke ala nui hele imi mana waihona like ole I nā ohina like ole au hoi hoi ai. No le kupu mai lana ana kumuhana like ole mai nā limahana like ole o nā wahi oe, o kaulia oe, o ka oihana wai, o lili'u o kalani, o ka lākaua ma kana kapu, kana huakai, ka apuni o ka honua. Laila, hele laho a pau imi I nā mea like ole pili keia ike. Ho'omaka kako vai I nā ike o loko me ka waiwai. A leila, ike ngā maho mai ia hui, he waiwai ke ia, ale no I laha. Pehea kako ho'olaha ai. Pono paha ho'okumu ha'awina, pono paha ho'okumu palapala. Mea pa'ahana kako a pau ea I kia wā. Pa'ahana ke kumu, pa'ahana ka makua, pa'ahana nā keiki, ana leila. A pehea, haku mākou I kia papahana o ki papa, pomo paha, a'ole paha. Ale mākou nā haku ia, ha'awi wale ia I kia kea. Nā lako e koho I ke komo paha, a'ole paha. Ano leila, ho'e mai kia wā o ka maia hulau, pono nā ha'awina. Pa'a ki ki.
Ua makaukau maila.
Ma ke kahi ano makaukau e nai, ale mākou I no'o nui no ka pa'akiki o nā kumu. I ka e ana maluna o ka Zoom, ho'opi hoi hoi I kau mau haumana e ho'olohe ma nā hola lo'ihi o ke kula.
Ke kaulona o ka no'o ka haumana.
A me ke punana, oia no. Ano leila, ua ma'o paha ko mau pa'ani au I haku ai, no'o hau, ho'opi hoi hoi I kia mau ha'awina, o haku ia ki kahi mau pa'ani ho'opakele, ke la mau escape rooms no hoi. No nā kaia puni, a'o lako, o nā papahana e lua mua a mako I ho'opukai ma ki papa, oia no ka la hoi hoi ea, me ka la ku'oko'a, I hele a kama'aina, ka la hui, kea me ka honua paha I nā la nui o ka hou. A ua holo pono, a leila ua ho'ohola nā makua, pela kako e holo muai.
I ole ka hana nui ma mua.
Oia no.
Hiki mai ke la wā o ka make I keia mau mea, a ua lo'a no, ua lako ka hale. A no'o wau I kau ea ma ka ho'opuka ana I ke kinona hua. Ea, I keia manawa, ea, ho'okumu I o huli hua. A ka I ole ke la mea mua no ulu kau paha, ea?
O ka leo ki ka mea mua. Ka mea nui I ka ho'okolo hua ana, ka ho'opa'a ana I keia mau enehana. A ka aole ia aole ia ka hopena no ka mea ho'olole ia na kinono hua a haku ia na papapihi a pono e ho'okomo ia I loko na enehana o ke la me kia kamipiula. No laila o kahi pahu hopu nui o mākou ia wā ka ho'opa'a ana I ke la ano I loko o na enehana a Apple I ho'opukai, a Microsoft ma, a Google ma, I hiki ke ku'ai I kamipiula ho a wale aku I ki kamipiula ma laila ka papapihi Hawaii.
A ho'ololi ka hae, ea?
Ho'ololi ia ka hae.
Ho'onene ei ka hae, Hawaii I luna.
No laila, oia.
Huki ia la.
A ka oia ka pahu hopu nui o ke la wā, lo'ihi loa ki kali ana I ke la ka launa ana me nā kānaka kupono e hiki ana ke kokue ia mākou I ke ia pahu hopu nui umi makahiki no ka ho'opa'a ana I ke la enehana I loko ka onehana Macintosh. Ma ka iOS ua puka wale mai momoli o ka hana mua. Ma Microsoft, ma ka uli e lia wale noa o I launa I mai ki kahi mau lima hana. Ma Microsoft I hiki ana ke kokue ia'u I ka ho'okomo ana. No laila, we hiki aku ke la wā, I wāna ana ia mamua, a ole pono ka po'e no'o pehea la wau I kiko ai I ko olalo Hawaii ma keia enehana hiki wale no ke ana ia.
E ano hana ho'omanawa nui ho'i keia, ea? Oia, mahalo nui wau I ka hana awaia ulu, a me kau hana ke kahi, ma ka ho'omanawa nui ana I keia mau enehana. Oiai.
O ka mea nui, ua hiki ke hana ia kia mamuli o ka hana a ka po'e liki me a vai ulu ma. mo ho'omaka me kulu kau, me papa kilo, a me awai ulu. No laila ua pa'a ke ike pili. You know, a hiki ke ho'ohana ia no laila kela me kia pahana ho i puka mai ana e kukulu ia maluna o kia kohua i pa'a mua mamule o ka hana a ka po'e he nui I loko o ke ao. You know, I kela makia makahiki nui e na kumu vai vai I hiki ke nana ia. O kahia a oliva I komo I ke ia. Ma manoa ua pa'a na waihona leo. Na pā leo kahiko I hiki ole ke ho'olohi ia oiai a ole I kau makasede, a ole ma Spotify. Ho'okiko ho'e ia ma ke kami pila na pā leo kanahiku kumavalu, kanaha kumalima, a hiki kia manawa hiki ki ho'olohi ia.
O ka mea nani o ke mau mea paua o e lohe nei o I hoi ke aloha nui I ka olelo makuahine, ka olelo, ke aloha e kaohi ana I ka holo mua o ke mau papahana, ka ho'opa'a ana I ka leo nā pasede, ka ho'opuka ana I ke kinona hua, ka ho'okohukohu ana I nā mo'olelo o nā li'i o ka ʻāina I hiki ke ho'ohana ia. Ano leila, o ka ninau nui ma hope o ka ho'okumu I ana o kekahi ʻenehana, o ka ninau hua e paha e uhai ana I ka ho'okumu I ana, o ia ho'i ka pehea la kākou e ho'ohana ai I keia ʻenehana. Pehea kākou e ho'ohana ai ia huli hua.
Well, no ka huli hua a ole wau I no nui pehe e ho'ohana I ai he aha kona vai vai I ki a'o ana I ko olelo. Ia'u he mea ia, he hana le'a ia, no laila I na luhi oi ka ho'opa'a ha'awina hiki ke ho'ohana ia keia. A ole wau ike, ko ka mahele hea o ka lolo e ho'ohana ia nei. O ko'a ke, ole ke he a'o olelo.
Olelo ana wau, na mahele a pau, no ka mea ke kahi manawa ano pa'akiki, ka iwi ana I ka olelo.
E haki po'o. Well, ua haku wale ia mamoli o kino e o ko ohoa. I mana o ia e vai vai ana a ole wau I no unui ua ike wau ua hiki ke hana ia he mau hola ka awale ko o e hoa o wau.
O iai I keia la nui ko kākou mahalo ia naha, ia. O ia ho'i ka Native Hawaiian Hospitality Association, ia. No ka malama ana I keia ano ahaku ka, no kākou e wala'au ai. No'ono'o ana wau, pehea kākou e ho'ike aku I kekahi o keia ike I ka po'e malihini e hele mai ana I Hawai'i nei. A olelo wau o iai hana wau ma ka oihana malihini. Maupopo ia'u, o ka malihini a ole no he malihini mai ka ʻaina e wale no. O ka malihini o keia ʻaina, he po'e no keia ʻaina kekahi, he po'e Hawai'i. No leila, pehea kākou e ho'oka'a aku I keia ike mai ia waiaulu, mai huli hua paha, mai ulu kau I keia po'e malihini o Hawai'i nei.
Ma ki papa, ma keia papahana, ma ki papa kiko o rota ga. Komo, noi komo, kakau inoa, a komo wale, aina waihona ma ka olelo Pelekania a me ka olelo Hawai'i. Ano leila, he ala komo ia, ina hoi hoi ka malihini, a ka hapanui o ka manawa, hoi hoi no lako. Komo, e maluna, helu helu, a o ina haawina like ole ma ka Pelekania, a e kekahi, hiki ke ho'oha like ia, ma ka au o ka olelo Hawai'i. Nā palapala ʻelua ma ka manawa like, he ala komo kela I ke a'o ana I ka ʻōlelo. Aia ia ma leila. So, oia kekahi.
A mo'olelo paha kākou I ka po'e e hana ana ma keia wahi ʻoihana. Ea, oiai, ma kekahi ʻano, nā kākou paha e ho'okulu mai ka ʻōlelo Hawai'i ma kou poʻoia pili iho no. Ea, ma ke kula kiʻekiʻe o Molokaʻi paha o e ho'okulu ma ana, ma ke kula nui o Hawai'i ma Maui, ea, ma aulani paha kekahi kākou a pau e hoa'o ana e ho'okulu mai keia ʻōlelo Hawai'i.
Pehea ʻoe ma Awalani?
Keia makahiki wa ano hauʻoli loa mākou I ka hoʻolauleʻa ʻana I ka mahina ʻōlelo Hawai'i. O ka makamua ia o ko mākou hoʻolauleʻa ʻana. Ua hoʻomaka mākou I papa ʻōlelo Hawai'i Ma kela me keia pule o ka mahina ʻōlelo Hawaiʻi no nā limahana. Malama ia kekahi papa no ke kamaʻilia, kekahi papa no ka hoʻomākaukau ana i ka iʻa, kekahi papa mele, me kekahi papa hula kekahi. No leila, o ka mea nui noʻu ʻo ia hoʻi ka holomua a me ke aloha i ka ʻōlelo. A me ka hoʻomanaʻo ʻana i nā kanaka he nui i hele mua, ma kēlā ala, i waiho mai i kēia makana o ka ʻōlelo Hawaiʻi no kākua pau, i hiki ke hoʻolauleʻa ia ma ka mahina ʻōlelo Hawaiʻi kēlā me kēia makahiki. Ai. Pehea, ʻo iai ano liʻiliʻi ka manawa i koe mai nei, he mau manaʻo paha kou no kekahi kanaka e makemake ana e hoʻomohala i kekahi ʻano polo kalamu, kekahi ʻenehana ʻōlelo Hawaiʻi?
Iaʻu he like me ka o I ʻōlelo mua he wā maikaʻi loa kea no ke aʻo ʻana I ko ʻōlelo ma mole o ka nui o nā kumu wai kia mau moʻolelo, ka ʻenehana. Ma ka pōʻaia pili o ka hoʻokipa malihini, manaʻawa hiki ke hoʻoikaika ia ka hoʻohana ʻana I ko ʻōlelo I kia manawa kau ka poʻe malihini ma ka mokulele ma Kaliponi ma hele mai a nana lākou I kikiʻi ʻoniʻoni, maikaʻi pili ana I nā ka pilikia o ke komo ʻana I ke kai I nā ʻaʻole maikaʻi ke anila, no ke aʻo ʻana I ka na holoholona ʻana hala pohe, na manu a pela aku, pehea ka hako ʻana I polo kalamu e hoʻonaʻoao ana iā lākou I pili ana I kia mo mea. Ma ke ʻano he paʻani no nā keiki, ʻaʻole lākou e noho nani ana nāna I ka wiki o I hoʻomākaukau ia, akā ina aia kēlā ma ke kelepona I hiki ke paʻani a o I pili ana I kia mo mea. O ka mea nui iaʻu ma kia pōʻaia pili o ka ʻōlelo ke ala I ka ike pono ana iā Hawaiʻi. Ka nā inoa wahi, nā inoa makani, nā inoa kai, nā ua, hoʻike ia ke ʻano o Hawaiʻi loko o ka ʻōlelo, a ʻo ia ke ala maikaʻi, ʻo ia kaʻu o haʻi wau I ka poʻe ma ka wā I aʻu ai wau I ka ʻōlelo Hawaiʻi, ua hoʻomaka wau I ike I ka honua ma kekahi ʻano ʻokoʻa, he ʻano maikaʻi.
Ua hulihia,
Ua mamole nana ia na mea pau ma kekahi ʻano ʻokoʻa. ʻAʻole lawa paha ka wā e noho ana lākou no ke aʻo piha ana, ka ina ano hemo iki ka I puka no ka ike ana I ke ano o ia I o Hawaiʻi I loko o kāna ʻōlelo. Okay.
A ma leila no I ke ia I ka waiwai, ka waiwai o ka ʻōlelo Hawaiʻi, o ka waiwai o kēia ʻaina I ka ʻōlelo Hawaiʻi. Pehea? Pehea kou manaʻo? He mau manaʻo paha kou?
He manaʻo paha. Ka mea e holomua I ka pono o ka lāhui, ai ka mea e holomua I ka pono o nā malihini. Like hoʻi me ka kumu I ʻōlelo ai no hoʻopili nana I kēia wahi nei aʻo I ka moʻolelo o ka pono o ka lāhui, ike I ka moʻolelo ike I kēia ʻano ike a nā kupuna I waiho ma laʻelaʻe no mākou. A no leila, ka pono o ka Hawaiʻi o ka pono no ia o ka malihini.
Pololei no hoʻi ʻoe. Aka, he aha kou manaʻo no ka pono o ka lāhui ma ka lilo ʻana he pono no ka poʻe malihini kekahi. Ma ka ʻaina, ma ka mālama ʻana I ka ʻaina, o ia kekahi mea ʻano ahuwale mai iaʻu, o ka pono o ka lāhui ʻaino I ke aloha o ka ʻaina.
He ahia mea, he aloha ʻaina,
He ninau paha kēlā no ka panela e hiki mai ana. Aka maupopo iaʻu, ua pane paha lākou I kēlā ninau no ka mea, he ninau nui kēlā. Aka ai like hoʻi wau,
Ai like mai kau I hoʻopuka e o ka nui o ka poʻe I komo I kēia hana, ua komo momoli o ke aloha. Nānā lākou I ka wā I hiki mai ana, ʻaʻole ka nui hana I kia mau mea no ko lākou pono I hono, a ka noʻonoʻo lākou I nā keiki na mo'opuna I hiki mai ana ai ho'omakakau ia kiao ene hana kekahi no ka ho'ohana pono ia ia mau hanauna I hiki mai ana.
E ala maa ia o ka makua.
A mamua ho'i ke kahua.
O ia.
Mamake wau e hapai aku I ka leo mahalo ia olua no ka hele ana mai I keia lā. A me ke kama I leo kuka. Walohe wau I nā mo'olelo he nui pili ka ene hana keia lā. Wa ano, poha ka lā e ea. Me ka hau'oli a me ka hoi hou I ka ene hana o keia wā e hiki mai ana. A me nā mea e kupu ana mai awai a ulu ke kahi.
Mahalo I ka o kou mau hana.
Mahalo kākou.
No leila, e kumu ka lei, mahalo nui a oi, e kumu ke ola tanahi, mahalo ia oi ke kahi. Mahalo ho'i, ia naha, ka Native Hawaiian Hospitality Association, no ka mālama ana I keia panela nei. Aloha nui loa kākou a mālama pono, ea? Ahui ho.
Ahui ho.
Ooh, nui ka haʻoli. That was awesome. Well, mahalo, welcome back. If you have been here with us for the entire day, you know that this is the live Q&A portion. I'm Kaino Horkajo again, and sitting next to me is the moderator from that panel, Kuanoni Kaniopio Crozier, aloha brother,
aloha.
And Malia Sanders, of course. And then on Zoom, we have my brother from Maui, Keola Donahue, and Kale Kava'a Roberts. We got, aloha. Nice to see you guys.
Ui, aloha.
Aloha mai.
Aloha. Good, and normally we have about 15 minutes for Q&A, but I think we're going to stretch them this time because we had some real good stuff in that panel. Now, I'm going to, a couple things right here. I want to give a shout out to OEV TV for everyone that was watching that panel that does not Olelo Hawaii, and you saw those amazing subtitles. That was done by our amazing OEV TV crew and the staff over there. But you will not get those subtitles when they Olelo Hawaii during this live Q&A. So, you know, just Maupopo understand that there's going to be a little bit of back and forth, but there will be no live closed captioning in this, okay? We're going to jump right into stuff. And Keola, I got a question for you first. There was a bunch of conversation in that panel about technology, which was amazing. And you are so humble in talking about coding and the things that you do. And Kunoni was constantly trying to feed you to talk more about it. And you always deflected as the amazing Kumu that you are. But as we are doing this on technology and in the media, we want to talk first about how do we elevate and broaden and expand the reach of Olelo Hawaii on live media, TV, and these sort of outlets. And I'm going to start with you, Keola, and then we can go around the room, whoever else has comments.
Well, I think one big thing is to get our keiki engaged with the technology and, you know, have them help move this forward. You know, I recall from my daughter's generation, you know, she went to Punanaleo Ohilo and then Navahio Kalani Opu'u. You know, the kids were really engaged in the technology, but as users, and they still are to some degree. You know, they love their games and their social media things. But not many that I know of personally have moved into the realm of learning how to code, learning how to create these instruments. And there are some groups that are doing it. Purple is one group with that kind of focus. But, you know, how do you engage them? You know, I have a 5-year-old grandson, and I bought him this little robot training kit, you know, just to teach them the fundamentals of learning how to create a program. So, you know, and having the skills in both sides is important. You know, when I went to UH Hilo in 1994, really my goal was to dual major in Hawaiian studies and in computer science. But what I found was there was absolutely zero overlap between the two programs. So it was going to take me a full 6 years to complete both. And, you know, I really wanted to focus on the Olelo. So, you know, I decided to drop the computer science side. And really what I picked up whatever I needed to know, what I needed to learn to make it functional. That's where I put my efforts on the technology side. I really could have, developed my programming skills to a higher level, or, creating user interfaces. But, to me, it was really all about the Olelo. And whenever we ran into a roadblock or an issue, okay, I'll go figure out how to make this thing work. But, having equal strengths in both, being able to approach it both from the, cultural language perspective, and being able to apply that with the technology skills, that would really be the ideal.
Oh, I think what I'm hearing Kumu say is finding solutions, right? Finding solutions to the challenges we're facing in putting Olelo Hawaii out into the public and into the community. And when I hear you say live stream media, I think about moments on television where maybe someone is speaking Olelo Hawaii and we need live captioning, or I'm hearing about people who are speaking, or there's something being said in Hawaiian language that then needs to be translated to another audience, right? So we need to have those people who are makaukau to pala, to live caption, to translate, to share either in real time on the mic or also maybe behind the scenes. And I think we're working up to that. I think we're seeing that there's a need for that. And even on this panel, right, we recorded and then we went in and we're kokua. We got some kokua, right, to go ahead and caption that. And so that was one solution to kind of make that possible, right?
Yeah, and I want to throw one more thing out. I don't want to dominate this.
Mary Monarch, hearing it there, hearing it in these, in these other platforms. Obviously, I know Keola brought up, what's going on in Aotearoa and Maori TV and things down there. So just constantly, looking for other efforts. Yeah. Kale, did you want to contribute anything to that, Manao? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, aloha kakou. Yes.
Aloha, bye.
Hola. So engaging, I think that we're fortunate in this time during the pandemic that we've gotten to, I guess, further our reach and accessibility in a lot of things. And that's really one of the big pushes for Awaiaulu, is to bridge that knowledge of the past so that we have access to it in this time, whether in Hawaiian or English. And so that we have access to so many resources and so many repositories, but really making that accessibility for people to use, that's a goal that we all need to work towards, right? Making it easier for us all to take that first step into Olelo and really jump off from there. So, and I think that's what we try to do in Awaiaulu, is try to make these stories, our history, ours again, regain that power and empower people to know our history, really.
Can I jump on that?
Please.
So another big issue I want to throw out is something that's not commonly heard in public discourse, is the issue of data sovereignty. And there are some incredible people working on that. There's a gentleman in Aotearoa, Keone Mahelona, who is with Tehiku Media. They're doing some amazing things. But in Hawaii, also Oiwi Parker Jones, folks like that. But, controlling the access to indigenous knowledge and ways, there's a blatant example of this on the mainland that's being discussed heavily right now, where there's this company of non-natives who had been collecting, knowledge of, was it Dakota language? I forget which Native American language it was. For years, they've been getting grant money and all this, and now they're trying to sell the data back to the tribe, which is, absolutely absurd. So I think we have to be cautious about how, a lot of this data is being used and being, maybe it's being transformed in a way where it becomes copyrightable, and then, we lose that control over it. But Keone is one, he's very a strong advocate of, he appreciates what we had done with Microsoft and Apple, saying we need to be able to create these technologies ourselves. and not be dependent on people who can, perhaps later take those creations based on indigenous knowledge and monetize it at the expense of those from whom the language comes.
Mahalo for that. We're going to move on to question 2. There was a lot of discussion in the chat room, and I think this is probably really good for a lot of the people listening about, how do they get involved? What's that first step? If, especially if they aren't in Hawaii, and we probably have a lot of people who aren't necessarily in the islands. There's not a Hawaiian language class. There are digital examples of that as well, but there is a lot of other language learning tools out there, like Duolingo. And Tony, in the Zoom, asked the question, Maka'olelo Hawaii. So I will ask it as well, and then I think we can have Kale perhaps answer the question first, or go. We'll see who wants it. Who wants to go? The question from Tony was, "E mea make paha o Duolingo e a'o ika o lelo Hawaii." So basically, is Duolingo, do you see it as a favorable thing?
Preferable way to start learning Olelo Hawaii.
And I think that was answered a little bit, but in the panel, but we'd love to enlarge that discussion. My streak is always being broken, so.
I think any path to jump in and to start your path on the journey to learn Hawaiian is a good path. Anyone, and as long as there is a saying, "Ale pau ka ike ka halau ho'okahi." So like not all knowledge is taught in one area. As long as we keep that in mind, the door is open with your first step, and keep going on that journey. We are students forever.
And it's such a personal journey, right? To learn Olelo Hawaii. And even for myself, having, Makua and Kupuna who gifted me with speaking Olelo Hawaii to me, I'm still finding myself searching for ways to learn more and wanting to know more and wanting to be in spaces like someone else said, right? In the chat, they asked about being in the wild, right? How do you hear Olelo in the wild? And I said, well, I'm thinking it's really getting into the wild and going in on your own personal safari, right? To learn Olelo Hawaii and to find ways to maybe integrate Olelo Hawaii into your daily life, maybe in a small way, maybe in a big way. But I think we talked about that in our panela, right? Kama ilio kako no ka Olelo Hawaii mako ola. And then how that becomes a bigger and bigger discussion. And then it becomes a bigger and bigger journey with the people around you. And suddenly you're going together and suddenly it's a kako thing and not just a me thing, right? And so mahalo nui a oi kumunuka hape ane mai kalama na'o.
Keola, did you want to add anything to that kind of discussion about, language?
Well, I think it's pretty well known that, people have different learning styles. Some of us work well in an immersion environment. Others, myself, I like the grammar-driven one. Particularly with learning Te Reo Maori, a lot of the grammatical structure is the same. There's a lot of lexical similarities. So, I was able to approach it, intellectually in that way better. But still, I was using 12, 13 different resources at one time. I wasn't just sticking to one book. So drilling the vocabulary, studying the words, listening to recordings, being able to do all those things. Don't put all of your eggs in one basket, as they say, but find a number of different resources that are going to expose you to the language in a number of different ways.
Mahalo. And I think what Kale said in the beginning, right? Just, it doesn't matter what it is, just take the first step.
Right.
And for you three, it's so, you make it so approachable. And, there's a lot of cultures out there who they hear somebody trying to speak and they kind of, get kind of ruffled feathers. But I feel like our community is not like that. At least you guys and a lot of us, no matter the effort is being made, right? And so I think a lot of people feel a sense of, shame or it's going to sound bad, but then what I always hear from people, even in my own journey is, mai hila hila, right? Just no shame, just start talking.
Right? Yeah, it's definitely an a'ai kahula kind of. A'ai kahula vaihoi kahila hila bakahale, right? The dare to dance and leave the shame behind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But also just hearing someone speak olelo to you unexpectedly is such a gift, you know? And to hear someone just come and olelo to you, like when I went to go buy bread one time, the guy at the register just let me buy my bread in Olelo, Hawaii and spoke to me. And that surprise was so touching to me because it's unexpected. And that's part of, you know, what we do at Aulani right now is holding this small space where you can hear Olelo Hawaii. And maybe we're not all fluent on this at the same level, but we're striving to have a space where Olelo Hawaii can be a medium of life and a medium of service and a medium of living, you know? And so I would say to people who can say a few words, please say those few words to us. You know, we would all love to hear them. Yeah. And we would love to talk to you, you know, but I'm sure Kumu has more, yeah, to Olelo mai.
We got the raised eyebrows.
Oh, Kumu here.
Not Kumu Elua.
Go ahead, Kelly.
No, I agree with what Kononi had said. It's just, you know, continue to search, and if you want a way in, there's always a way in. And it's expanding. I seen in the chat there was another question asking about inclusivity of Native Hawaiians with disabilities. And you know, there are services even in our universities. There's opportunities for free classes here and there. It's surprising to us. We don't even know all of the possibilities that are out there sometimes to get your foot in the door to learn Hawaiian, but it's out there. So just have to be that curious mind who wants to go searching for it.
Well, and thank you, Kale, because that was going to be my next question. Was that question we saw in the chat of, you know, what disability inclusive Olelo Hawaii resources are there, or people that require, you know, different or that have different learning styles. You know, Keola, you mentioned you attack things from a, you know, grammatical, linguistic, sort of intellectual way, as opposed to say Keola Leo or something that's more conversational, and then of course, yeah, Duolingo, visual, right,
just like the Duolingo platform.
Right.
Yeah. So
I think when it comes to access, right, it's all of us creating ways for other people to access in our own spaces, right? We know the people around us, we know the people we relate to in our life, and how can we create tools, right, that allow people to jump in, like huli hua, and just play a game, put the words in. Kumu, I thought when you said that you sorted the words in a particular fashion, I thought that was like mastery of doing that, right? Because I wouldn't have thought to do that, right? But that is your ike, right? And that was what you brought to that tool, right? And I think if we all bring something,
well, I think it goes to, you know, what was being discussed earlier about, you know, feeling welcome and feeling unashamed. You know, if in that case, if somebody's going to get a bunch of words that only appear once in the newspapers and they've never heard of it, maybe it's not in the dictionary, they're going to get discouraged and leave it. You know, same way if you don't kind of launa with your kumu, you know, either personality-wise or instruction style, and it's not comfortable for you, you're not going to get it. Move on and find a situation that works for you. So for me, you know, this is actually, you know, Te Reo is my fourth. I studied Irish Gaelic, you know, about 20 years ago in Ireland for a solid month in an immersion kind of environment. So, you know, for me, the grammatical thing makes sense because that's kind of how I program my brain to work anyway. But for other people, you know, just putting the immersion, listening, following, observing, you know, find that situation, and same thing with the programs. Find the program that works for you. Find the ala. And if you come into a situation where you feel it's, you know, you're being judged for not progressing fast enough, it's probably the wrong situation for you. Find find someone who's going to be supportive of your journey and not, you know, not make you feel discouraged about it.
Sometimes the person who's hardest on the journey is ourselves. Right? And that we talked about that in our panel, the whole Umanava Nui of the journey, right? And the patience and resilience it takes to learn something new is pa'akiki, right? Pa'akiki. But the aloha, right? The aloha that makes you like want to do it, right? Makes you want to buy all the cookbooks like I do, you know?
Well, I think it's
kanayokana.net might be a good resource too, yeah, Kumu? Yeah. I know kanayokana.net/olelo has all the different resources for Olelo Hawaii, and I know they've tiered those by a beginner, intermediate, and advanced level as well. So that might be somewhere you can find all kinds of programs, whether it's Kulaivi, Kaleo Oivi, links to Ulukau, vehevehe.org, all these Awayaulu.
Used to is a term you brought up earlier, ha'aha'a. You know, you need to ha'aha'a yourself and acknowledge I'm just a beginner. I'm just learning. I need to allow myself to make mistakes. I need to give myself time and realize that, you know, to even get to a moderate intermediate level of proficiency is going to take you a few years. So there will be bumps and stumbles along the way, and just take a deep breath and move on and continue with it. I think we get too easily discouraged sometimes and give up. So we just, you know, I say remember where you are in your journey, and that it's not the same as maybe where you are in other areas of your life. Recognize that you're a beginner, and then halamua.
Yeah, and it's hard to start from the beginning, you know, especially as an adult, right? You know,
it's hard to start from the beginning, but if you don't start,
you
didn't do anything. You quit before you even began.
Which is a great segue to the last kind of wrap up, closing thoughts, and we've kind of been, I guess, talking a little bit about it, which is, you know, we'll just kind of go around the room. Any closing thoughts, or, you know, just how do people get involved? You've already provided, you know, some great, you know, examples over there. But yeah, just, you know, any message you have for the people in the audience. We'll start with you, Kale, and then we'll go to you, Keola.
As mentioned in the recorded session, we have a site, Kipapa, awaiulu.org. You perhaps have it in your NAHA website with the links to other things, but Kipapa is a resource that we have available online with various curated collections on some of the important dates. Perhaps we have 2 of our Hawaiian holidays, collections that teach you about what they are, how it started, some good history in there with primary resources and secondary resources in Hawaiian and English for you to learn about. So, you know, nothing like learning history to learn about what's going on in Hawaii. And we're going to be releasing 3 more collections this month. So stay tuned with our Kipapa, and you'll be learning a lot more as we go along, and we'll continue to build there as well.
Yeah, I want to do a shout out. I'm not sure if it's Shana, Kukila. Beautiful point that I wish I had gotten to earlier through the mele. You know, the mele is such an incredible access point. I mean, how many of us, you know, growing up, even if we didn't understand, we're hurting mele and we're able to recognize particular words here and there. I would like to do a whole class that was just teaching Olelo through the mele at some point. The opportunity hasn't presented itself. But, you know, not only the language considerations, but the cultural ones, the connecting place names to stories and things like that. You know, that's an incredible opportunity that I don't think many of us, usually when you get into language and mele, you're talking about folks in the, you know, upper division courses and graduate level at the university where you're really engaging at that. I think we could be more purposeful with using mele even at the introductory level. Punanaleo did a wonderful CD for the Kamali'i a few years ago, and I'm struggling to remember the name. I was trying to find it on my bookshelf of, you know, mele that were specifically composed for teaching particular grammatical structures and particular cultural aspects So, perhaps that's another way the industry could kokua is, with some funding to engage, more in that kind of, development of curriculum for language and cultural learning.
Awesome. And that was a call to action for somebody in the industry. Malia, we'll go to you next.
That was a great segue, I think, to the work that NAHA is doing. As many of our panelists says, it starts with small things. And over the past years that I've been with the organization, NAHA has taken on language projects where we do translation for a number of different things. Our partner at HTA, we translate their agendas and for all of their public meetings that they do, and it stands side by side with English, and it actually is above it, which is like a great way to honor the fact that this is the language of our home. This is the language of our people. I get a little bit emotional about it.
Yes.
Because even for me, I've been on my own journey of learning. It's taken me a long time to realize how really important it is that we do normalize the language of our place. And so I've been heavily involved in the FESPAC Commission meetings, and I have a team of people around me that speak fluently, write fluently. And so they support me in getting these things created for community. And, I don't always know what's going to happen when something gets created in Olelo, Hawaii. But as Kale said, you're laying the foundation of something that's there so that maybe in the future, someone else comes back to it and gives it a different life than the one that it had when it was first created. And for me, my journey of Olelo, Hawaii it's been an important part of my work. It's important to our people. And I want to make sure that I find ways to incorporate that as much as we can. We have on our website short little videos about how to put the keyboard on your computer. And it starts with little things like that. Because I write emails all the time to people in the industry, and they sometimes respond, they go, I don't know what that word means. Can you tell me what that word is? And it's an opportunity to engage them and say, hey, go check out our website. There's a way that you can include the keyboard in your emails. And then when you're done doing that, go check out this other website to explain the deeper meaning of that word that I shared with you. And it means this to me, but it means more. And it is having a place to start and having a place to lay a foundation for people, whether they are Maino, Malihini, or people that work in the industry as well. So I have a lot of hope for what normalization means. It's such a big, broad word.
It is.
But the more that we use it with each other, the more opportunities we have for technology to be incorporated. And my hope is that we figure out, these using technology, figuring out the ways that we can make it more normal.
Yeah, mahalo, Malia, and mahalo for all the work that NAHA does, in this effort. Oh, Kononi, you get the last word.
I think what I'm hearing from everyone is it's just a kako thing right now.
It is.
Right? It's a kako thing. And hearing your aloha, for Olelo, Hawaii, and for this place, and for this lahui, is really the thing that makes us move on, take action, right? And go out and find the people we need to move this along. So I just mahalo all of you, from Maui, Ai Molokai, yeah, and I know from Aihae all the way to Nihoa as well. There are Po'i Hawaii out there all trying to do this together. And I know probably in our conference as well, watching. So aloha nui loa kako, and yeah, it's a kako thing. Mahalo. Mahalo nui.
Mahalo. Mahalo nui. Mahalo for all of your mana'o and your ike. Thank you all so much. And I believe I'm going to hand it back over to Kilani Shibata. Thank you for all of your questions. And yeah, what an amazing panel. Mahalo.
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 Mahalo nui to all of you for those great ninau and for sharing your mana'o with us about the creative ways in which Hawaiian language is being incorporated through projects and programs that our community members are engaged in. NAHA encourages industry leaders, workers, and visitors to begin an engagement today with the Olelo Hawaii by visiting the resources at naha.com/Olelo Hawaii. Learn the Piapa Hawaiian alphabet and practice pronunciation with Hakalama drills. Use the Ma'e toolkit as a guide to grow your knowledge of place, culture, and language. Strengthen your Olelo Hawaii in our monthly classes. See how Olelo Hawaii and values of hospitality are reflected in our training, tools, and resources. As we reimagine Hawaii's future and we consider the many pivotal moments in today's conversations, Naha would like to share a short video on some of the key takeaways from amazing speakers and panel conversations we have had today.
The thing that we really want to push is having our visitors try and educate themselves when they come down there. Educate yourself about the geography. That's part of being a good visitor. Educate yourself about the place you're visiting. Understand the geographic makeup. Understanding the geological makeup, the cultural makeup. And it's part of being a good visitor no matter where you go.
Ike wau I ka hoihoi o na kupuna na makua I hiki ole ke kama I leo maka olelo Hawaii. A pai mau I lo holomua homau ki ano hana. Homa ke la ano haaheo I loko o o'u. Ke la puno me oe, me na haumana ka e puni like ole ea. He haaheo a he kule ana ia. No kako e awamu pono e ano leila. E mea la.
When I think about the vision that we have at the Hawaii Tourism Authority for regenerative tourism, it really is this idea of holistic destination management, that we no longer can focus on just the economic outcomes of tourism. We need to think about beyond that, holistically, all of the impacts on traffic, our natural environment, etc. And so we're excited to have these conversations today.
It's been my experience, the visitors, when they're here, they will do what they want to do. Yeah. And unless you're there to help guide them and ensure that they follow, these new regulations, they're gonna do what they want to do. And so that's a key part is you can set up technology, but you still need boots on the ground to ensure that everybody honors these regulations.
Yeah. We have Pacific Island heritage, and in the next few decades, some of our Pacific Islands are going underwater. And so I believe that farmers are a big part of that solution, and by building their capacity, we're just making sure we are all resilient in the face of all of that, right? So that inspires me to keep going and, keep fighting the good fight.
O ka mea nui ia'u ma kia puaʻia pili o ka ʻōlelo ke ala I ka ʻike pono ʻana iā Hawaii. Ka nā inoa wahi, nā inoa makani, nā inoa kai, nā ua. Hoʻike ia ke ʻano o Hawaii loko o ka ʻōlelo. Oia ke ala mai kai, oia kaʻu o haʻai wau I ka poʻe ma ka wā. Ia ua I wau I ka ʻōlelo Hawaii, ua hoʻomaka wau I ʻike I ka honua ma kekahi ʻano o koʻa. He ʻano mai kai.
Ua hulihia, ea.
Ule mamuli I nana ia na mea o ma kekahi ʻano o koʻa. ʻAʻole lawa paha ka wā e noho ana lako no kia o piha ana. Ka ina ʻano hemo iki ka I puka no ka ike ana I ke ʻano oia I o Hawaii I loko o kana ʻōlelo.
Wow, so many lessons learned. We have had so many amazing conversations over the past 2 days, and to see the culmination of the work of so many like-minded community members and leaders in the industry allows me time to reflect on the realization that the foundation of Malama and the ideas of regenerative tourism are certainly within grasp. Realization that the value of Malama is tied to every discussion really allows us a better vantage point from which to begin to work towards more net positive solutions for Hawaii our economy, and for our community. Native Hawaiians have been nurturing regenerative systems in Hawaii since the first voyage from Kahiki. The Ahupua'a motto of living system stewardship and Hawaiian values like Ho'okaulike, Ma'alama, and Aloha Aina are just a few that Native Hawaiians have applied and made actionable since time immemorial. But no matter the context, Native Hawaiian culture remains the key to regenerative future and how Hawaii is viewed from a global perspective as well. Dr. Kanahele shares the guest-host-place model, and the relationship between guest, host, and place is of critical importance in the regenerative tourism system, as we are reminded that the host and the place hold the most weight when combined together. The necessary shift in perspective prioritizes our place, our community, and culture persists as a result. Regenerative tourism, by definition, must conform to the realities of regenerative life itself, founded upon the unique environmental system of Aloha Aina. The land is what feeds us, it nurtures us, and it allows us to live in aloha with ourselves and with others, and within the relationships with nature and our surroundings. Stewardship, specifically Ma'alama, is a reciprocal relationship that has a shared interest for both the steward and what is being stewarded. And it is also one of the guiding principles behind regenerative tourism in Hawaii. Circular economy also has a pivotal role to play in ensuring that money generated in Hawaii stays here in Hawaii, reducing capital flight and supporting local families and programs that make Hawaii stronger and more resilient. Buying and supporting local create opportunities for more community engagement with the industry, and in turn give our community members the ability to thrive. As the living language of Hawaii, we all have a kuleana to ensure Olelo Hawaii continues to be normalized. The aloha built into our hospitality lies in the humble voice that calls one to visit. It is a voice that must undoubtedly embrace Olelo Hawaii. Language is the key to culture, and by familiarizing ourselves with the language of this land, we actually learn so much more about ourselves and about our relationships with each other. Whatever paths may lay ahead, one thing is for sure: we are in charge of the lens through which the world views, understands, and loves Hawaii. And aloha and malama are the strongest foundations in which we seek the desired future we envision. We must be extremely vigilant in ensuring that how we present ourselves to the world is a true reflection of who we are at home. As we grow into betterment, so shall our ability to achieve something truly regenerative. While the beginnings of change are imminent, if not already in progress, the fruit of our labor will be enjoyed by our keiki and mo'opuna for generations to come. If we are to leave them with a better chance in our place and to inherit a Hawaii we envision, we must consider our actions today as the foundation upon which they will thrive. We all play a critical role in creating a different future, whether it is engaging organizations dedicated to this new future or creating a regenerative opportunity yourself. No matter what you do, it all starts with aloha. Let's all do our part to put the values of our culture into action. Let's be better stewards of our place. Let's be a more conscious buyer. Let's lead with Hawaiian values. Let's be better advocates of language and culture. This mindfulness, this enduring aloha for each other and for Hawaii will certainly lead us to a future that we envision. A Hawaii reimagined, a Hawaii at the crossroads of the world. Mahalo nui for joining us at this huina, this convergence at the intersection between tradition and innovation. Mahalo nui for attending Kahuina 2022. E ola Hawaii, e malama Hawaii ne. Aloha.
Mapalapana kuahivi Uluvehi kavekiu Kikamaina manu Inanea mai hoiku Mapalapana kuahivi Uluvehi kavekiu Kikamaina manu Inanea mai hoikau Kekai na pe mali Kalama kai o mapala Olele ko mai ka uliko Vai mata te aloha Kekai na pe mali Kalama kai o mamala Olele ko mai ka uliko Vai maka he aloha Uana mai ku'umele No kawahine hano hano O ka haku velo velo O leina ala koinoa Uana mai ku'umele No kawahine hano hano O ka hoku velo velo O leina ala koinoa O ka hoku velo velo O leina ala koinoa Ava puhi mele mele O leina ala Ka mea ho'okani. Music makers. Ka mea ho'okani ua oe loa I ka hana ka mea ho'okani ua oe loa I ka hana koe ana I ke kika e Hawaii maoli koe ana I ke kika e Hawaii maoli kupo na kane, he kane kapila kako. Veia na mo'olelo I haoli ai nakanaka veia na mo'olelo I haoli ai nakanaka na mele o Hawaii kahiko I mele ia me ka mai kai na mele o Hawaii kahiko I mele ia me ka mai kai koe mele Tona kupo na kane, he kane kapila kako. Ha'i mai ka mo'olelo no ka mea ho'okani. Ha'i mai ka mo'olelo no ka mea ho'okani. Koe mele Tona kupo na kane He kane kapila kako
City lights are shining, beautiful sight you might say, but they don't compare to a starry skyline. Miles of pasture and moonlight, a natural beauty that I find. Shine from the mountains to the ocean side, and I know I couldn't leave this life behind. Wake it to warm sunrise, or the sunset on an evening drive. Sea breeze on an open coast, that's what I love the most. Feeling of an ancient wind, climbing up to her home again. Rolling hills, beautiful skies, island light. Dip your toes in the sand, wash the song from your hair. Healing waters, they will understand. roam the valley so wide, sing with the birds as they fly. Thank the journey for my peace of mind. And I know I couldn't leave this life behind. Wake it to warm sunrise, or the sunset on an evening drive. Sea breeze on an open coast, that's what I love the most. Feeling of an ancient wind, climbing up to her home again. Rolling hills, beautiful skies, island life. There's a place that I wanna go to see the other side, 'cause I know the grass is greener where I reside. Take me home so I don't have to dream for another night. 'Cause when I rise, wake it to a warm sunrise, oh, the sunset on an evening drive. Sea breeze on an open coast, that's what I love the most. Feeling of an ancient wind, climbing up until her home again. Rolling hills, beautiful skies, island life. Rolling hills, beautiful skies, island life.
Industry representatives. This opportunity has been another way to place action on the value of ma'alama, and we are excited to hear what the future holds for these amazing small business ventures. We hope this initiative will set the foundation for a long-term mission of strengthening, elevating, and bridging the gap between Hawaii's locally owned businesses and the visitor industry. Our community is a diverse and integrated system of pilina relationships. It is founded upon the values of Native Hawaiian culture and the countless generations of Kanaka Oiwi who have come before us and who have thrived in the most isolated landmass in the world. Through the lens of being Kanaka, our Hawaiian values and relationships also have a role to play in facing the challenges and opportunities that exist within our Hawaii economy. In our second panel, we seek to uncover the opportunities ahead of us in the shift toward a more circular and regenerative tourism economy. We will discuss how indigenous infrastructure models, entrepreneurship, circular economy, and community groups all play a critical role in seeking a truly regenerative model. What are some areas of most concern as we look at the larger picture? And what do we need to be taking stock of? Leading us in this conversation is Kirsten Kahaloa, president of Hui Oi Hana, a Native Hawaiian Chamber of Commerce located on Hawaii Island.
Aloha mai kako. Mahalo for being here, everyone, today. We're super excited to talk about regenerative tourism and circular economies. So my name is Kirsten Kahaloa, and I am here representing Hui Oi Hana, the Hawaii Island Native Hawaiian Chamber of Commerce, as well as my professional role at Iole Global Resiliency Hub in Kohala, which focuses on creating a model for sustainability grounded in indigenous knowledge. I'm super excited to be here and happy to have you folks with us today. And we have a esteemed panel of amazing leaders here in our room today, which I'd like to introduce. We have John Morgan from Kualoa Ranch, and we have Mahina Paishan Duarte representing Aina Aloha Economic Futures. Mahalo for being here. Aloha mai. As we get started, I know we're not physically on Aina, or we're above Aina, not touching Aina, and just to kind of connect us to sense of place, I just kind of wanted us to share what maybe in this moment, whether it's childhood memory or where you feel you want to connect to, what Aina and or Vai is meaningful for you just in this moment. Doesn't have to do anything with regenerative tourism or circular economy, but let's bring Aina or Vai into this room today. So I don't know who would like to go first and introduce themselves, and then that space for you.
I'll start. I got a couple of different Aina and Vai that are important to me. Part of my whakapapa, if you want to call it, comes from New Zealand and Aotearoa, and we're part of the Tainui that is in the Waikato area. So my daughter's living down there now, and so that's meaningful. But other than that, here in Hawaii, Kualoa Ranch is where I've made my entire career. Born and raised in the area at Apua, and still. I think I've been working 51 years there now, and started when I was 14, and so the Aina of Kualoa is important, and the Vai around that area, Kualoa, Ka'a'awa, and Hagipu.
Yeah, for me, Mahina Paishan Duort, the Aina and the Vai and Kai that I always think fondly of and draw so much inspiration and energy from is He'eia Fish Pond. And that's where I actually met John for the first time, our work in Huimalamalokoi'a. And for me,
you started it.
I had the honor and privilege of helping to lift up Paipai o He'eia, which continues to do awesome work. And for me, He'eia Fish Pond, I started going down there, volunteering at a very young age, around 19. And even before that, went to family parties at He'eia State Park, Ulumo Village, in which my aunt was caretaker. Grew up having some kind of affinity, but somewhat separated, because this is a special place that I saw, but we weren't allowed to go down. But as I had the opportunity as a teenager to visit He'eia Fish Pond, I was just always intrigued with this mystery. Like, I knew that there is it was a place that held great power and great wisdom, and we just needed to spend time with the place and unlock it. And for me, that's why I feel so blessed to be able to go back to these kinds of Aina that really awaken within us this deep ancestral connection and responsibility to place. And if I hadn't had my time at He'eia, I would have not been able to serve in the other ways that I have in charter schools, in business, in policy making. So it's Aina that continues to feed me and to guide the way that I live my life.
Mahalo for sharing. I know it gets kind of personal talking about those connectivities to Wahipana, Aina, Kai. But I thought we bring that into the space because as we're talking about regenerative tourism and circular economies, I think it's important that we know that we have an opportunity to make a shift. 2020 during the pandemic halted tourism. I know it was challenging. It was scary for some at different various levels, but I think we've seen that there are opportunities to shift, to pivot, to reevaluate some of the things we're doing within the visitor industry, within our communities as a whole, and see, are there ways we can do things better? We know that as community, with visitor industry pretty much halting, we saw Aina, Kai regenerating, and what that meant for people in community or community members being able to go visit spaces where it was like, too many tourists, I don't go there anymore. But those were special places as a child. And now there is a strong desire from community to protect those spaces and really talk about how, we don't want to say no to the visitors, but how do we do a better job to have a balance between the visitor industry and community, especially in those Aina spaces. So, getting into circular economies and regenerative tourism. John, we'll start with you. Just tell us what's happening at Kualoa?
Sure.
Some of this is a check-in because we know things have evolved in the past 2 years. What's happening there, and tie that into, from your perspective, some of the things that do fit into this vision of moving towards opportunities in circular economies and regenerative tourism.
Thank you. What is regenerative tourism? Yeah, it's interesting to try to put words to it. And to me, it's kind of how does the visitor industry positively impact the environment and the community in a way that increases in value over time? So to me, the underpinnings of that, the environment and the community, and they go hand in hand because one can't live without the other. COVID was an interesting thing because as a company, we had, I think, almost 350 employees prior to COVID, and then COVID hit, and we ended up having to furlough a whole bunch of different people. But we offered, because of the CARES Act, all of that, we offered everybody the opportunity to come back to work, and we called them essential workers if they wanted to work in the taro patch or do whatever. And it was really inspiring to see how many people, chose to come back. And so that was one interesting thing that really centered us. And the other thing was the people that we didn't have to furlough were the ag people, the people that need to keep taking care of the animals and growing the crops. And then we had to figure what we're going to do with all of that produce. And so we pivoted. Our team was amazing, and our first thing was a farm to car. Because everybody's masked up, and you did the triple check, and it was as we all know, it was an amazing time. But you pivot, you figure out what's next, and for us, the development of the local market for our ag products further was a benefit, and then related to tourism, what we did is we kind of made everybody drive out to Kualoa. And a lot of people here in Honolulu don't realize Kualoa is not that far away. The windward side is not that far away. Some people feel like, oh yeah, I might as well go to Maui or something if I'm gonna to go to the windward side of the island. But so the local market, both for ag and for just come to see what we have going on as things opened up. So that was one of how we evolved, and now we're not back to full swing, but we have over 300 people. We've got all kinds of different agriculture going on. Our education programs are coming back. Prior to COVID, we had about 12,000 local school kids a year coming out there, and we had a lot of visitors, and we have all kinds of different opportunities for visitors, and so and we're coming back, and things are good. So.
Mahalo for sharing. Mahina, just in case anyone doesn't know, I believe everybody knows what Aina Aloha Economic Futures Initiative is and what's been going on. If you want to just kind of tell us about that, and what are the next phases of that worker space, or what's happening with what has been started since the pandemic.
Sure. So Aina Aloha Economic Futures is really just a coalition of 14 individuals. And we came together during the height of the first shutdown. And the reason why was because we felt like we didn't have a voice. We as Kanaka Maoli, we as Native Hawaiians did not have a voice at the table to rethink about how we might reimagine Hawaii 2.0, or an economy that's going to be better for all of us and not just a few, and is going to diminish our impact, negative impact to Aina, and is going to really honor Native Hawaiian values and culture. And so we, instead of asking to join everybody else's tables, we figured we just create our own and then invite anyone and everyone who wants to participate, which are grounded in 4 primary values and principles. And so what we found from this community lift is that, yes, community wants to participate in collective, collaborative solution making, so much so that, to our surprise, at the opening of this past session, we had several legislators that, particularly on the House side, that had called out Aina Aloha Economic Futures and our model and our priorities within our policy playbook within their some of the items that they're going to put forward as a legislature. And, you know, we're happy to report that a good handful of initiatives that we have been supporting have gone through and is now on Gov's desk to become law. And so we know this. We know that community wants to continue to be a part of the collective solution making. And so when we talk about regenerative travel, I think that's a requirement. That's a must-have. Like, we cannot go back to a situation where there are only a few folks that are making important decisions that are going to affect all of our lives. So why not pool the intellect of the many and find common ground so that we can all find innovative solutions moving forward in service of Hawaii.
And can you also share from the 14, you've grown to how many people have signed on to?
Thank you. Thank you. So we have more than 2,500 signees onto our declaration. And actually, this is a call out to whoever's listening in. If you'd like to check out our website, please do so. AinaAlohaFutures.com and add your voice, add your leo. And we'll be doing another round of community listening sessions and lift up what community wants. One area is definitely regenerative travel and circular economy.
Awesome. And to follow up too, gosh, I'm going to mess this up, but you folks had like a checklist and a grading system. What has been the feedback, or are there any examples of those who've used it, whether it's within the visitor industry sector or not? How have people kind of taken on and actually used it within the working spaces that they do that fit into this platform?
Sure, thank you. You know, as local people, we love to talk story, but we love to take action. And so for us, we want to just create a tool in which people could really operationalize and apply the aspirational aspects of Aina Aloha Economic Futures, and then provide an opportunity for companies, agencies, nonprofits, individuals even, to assess where are they at in their journey of transitioning from the current situation to a business model that is more generative, that is more circular. And so one really concrete example that I'm very happy to share about is through Hawaii Green Growth and our collaboration with them, they invited us to share the AAEF tool. They combined it with their Aloha Plus dashboard and their tools. We've coalesced the two tools, and then we worked with one of their major partners, the Alawai Watershed. And so the engineering company, then we worked with them for a year. Want to shout out to Ulalia Woodside, who's an AAEF member who worked really hard on this, as well as Kani Ka'anana from HT as well. And now this major international engineering firm has adopted this tool, and they've created their own tool to really assess the impacts for which all of their tactical decisions will have. So we find that whenever we can find ways for companies, organizations, individuals to assess their own impact, we believe that folks will choose to do the right thing. And again, this is a journey. No one has the silver bullet, but if we can reflect on negative and positive impacts, we should do that.
You know, you brought up a good term of tools or toolkit or resources. You know, as we think of how do we create more opportunities, I know some of the work that both of you are doing have been very engaged in kind of accelerating this regenerative model or holding on to it. Those who may not have started, whether it's organizations, individuals, businesses, how do we kind of bring people on board? How do we provide others maybe with tools to kind of get on this circular economy, regenerative tourism train as a model? So I'm going to start with you kind of from that business perspective. You folks have a lot of various ways you've modeled that. So whether it's through those examples, just kind of share how we can give others tools to move these examples forward?
Sure, thank you. I think, like Mahina said, the partnership with Hawaii Green Growth and the tools, the whole thing of benchmarking and measuring stuff is important. And no matter what the size of the organization, if you put an effort towards something, it's gonna, start to produce results. We are lucky that we're large enough. We hired we created a sustainability manager position, and part of that person's duty is to start to do the measurement of different things. And so we actually produced a sustainability report, and we actually have a whole stewardship department that just manages native ecosystems. And so that's part of the sustainability report is the data. How many koa trees did we plant? How many, all kinds of different things. And we do native bird surveys and whatever. But I think, to the point of how can others do it? It's just making it a priority. And everybody's capacity is a little different to do that, but you don't need capacity to make something a priority. It's a personal discipline thing. And one thing I liked about what some of the values that you start with is the opuali'i thing, and not thing. It's a very great concept. And again, whether you're a large or a small organization, or even in your own ohana, it's your responsibility to take care of your kuleana, and that along with it, requires action.
Right.
Yeah.
And one of the things I really appreciate about your company is that you folks endeavor to hire locals, like from, very near your Kula Ranch. I think that's really important, being able to employ kama'aina and folks that are born and raised there.
One of our, we're grateful to get back to it is, years and years ago, it was important. And so again, you just move in the direction that you need to go. We have a Hawaiian Cultural Resources manager, and then, that person left, and then COVID hit. And so we're just getting back to that too. So, we just look for areas that you need to strengthen. And a lot of times there's no roadmap. There's no, you look at from a Western model of you invest here and it's going to produce results there. And sometimes, that answer is not there. And so you just have to go with the na'au and do what you think is right. So.
I like that. Mahalo. Mahina, what do you think are some additional examples or tools or maybe success highlights with organizations kind of moving in this model? I know you wear a multitude of hats.
Sure.
So yeah, what are some of those great examples of moving in the right direction for regenerative tourism, circular economies? What does that look like?
Yeah, so I think in Hawaii, we have some really great examples, particularly in the fashion industry, right? So you have Kealo Pico, for example, that is trying to put a spotlight on the harmful practices that fashion can have, right? So, the dyes that are used, the material that's used, and I love that they're trying to source and source all of their materials to the extent possible and do all their printing here. If folks didn't know, fashion is like one of the major contributors to waste globally. So that's an area I think that we are already having some effect. I think the other area is like construction. So I have a friend who's the executive director of Reuse Hawaii. So there's lots of opportunities in deconstruction. So with the material that we have, like how do we reuse the material that we have instead of trying to import and to continue to degrade mountainsides and hillsides to create concrete? There are now industries in which you can refab wood, like the Albizia project, invasive woods, where you can refab concrete and so forth. So circular economy is really about thinking about how can we reduce waste within the value chain. And so we have really great examples, I would say, in these other sectors. Outside of Kula Ranch and maybe a few other Aina-based organizations, I think we have yet to create our shining examples. And to me, that's the
like that's excitement.
That's the excitement of it, right?
Yeah.
No, that's really exciting. And you know, kind of teeing off of that for either of you, as we think of that kind of, to some degree, it's ingenuity around, we're not going to take the normal route to do visitor industry. We're not going to take the normal route of starting a business. It's about profit, that, you know, we're really looking for that circular economy, reducing waste, environmental stewardship and support, as well as, people, planet, profit, that triple bottom line. So as we look into that, how do we just encourage the businesses out there in our community, a lot of them touching the visitor industry, but just that entrepreneurship ingenuity? How do we just continue to foster that within our communities, the youth and the young people growing up, or just anyone really excited about this space? Because I do think the more involved we get businesses and entrepreneurs into visitor industry, you know, the more we connect community, right? So it is a kako thing and not us versus them, or, you know, we're separate entities. We're just all one part of the system here in Hawaii. So how do we just get people excited about innovation around this space?
I think one way, you know, kind of lies in a personal value of how do you continue to improve? You know, how do you how do you keep pushing? And mentorship, I think, is a good concept, because, and I think, you know, being a mentor, you know, is kind of the result. You know, that you have to have somebody who wants to be a mentee, and part of that is you look for examples out there, whether it's a mentor or in the business sense. You know, what are models out there that we can follow? You know, one of the ones that I'd mentioned, New Zealand. There's a place called Te Puia, which is a kind of a combination of a cultural site and a craft college, basically, and they do carvings and they do a bunch of different crafts, and the local people come in, and so you actually get to, you know, to work and produce and create a skill, but it marries the, you know, the whole tourism piece and local people doing what they want to do. And I'm not saying that's you know, what we need, but it's a model like that. And then there was something a long time ago out in Ko'olauloa, put together by the Queen Emma Foundation, and they called it Ho'oponopono Ko'olauloa, and it was just bringing together. Were you part of that thing? It was a long time ago. So anyway, it was a great effort, and they just brought a whole bunch of community together, and at the Turtle Bay, and just a bunch of you know, people kind of visioning the future. And then a subsequent thing to that was another effort, and they looked at economic clusters or areas that had similarities. And so one of the things that you know, came out of this economic cluster analysis, and it was based on the North Shore, was looking at Napa Valley in California. And so you have an agricultural area. What was common? Well, it was good for wine. Well, one winery doesn't make a destination, and so, you know, together they created a destination, you know, which is now known as Napa, which everybody goes to, and hotels and this and that and the other thing. But I think Hawaii has the opportunity to do a similar thing. So, what are our core strengths? So, what are we really good at? And you know, how do we further develop the brand? You know, from a visitor perspective, Hawaii has an amazing brand, and we need to continue to refine it and tweak it so that it becomes more of what we want to be in the future, rather than just what it is today. And so, you know, around things around, you know, Aina Momona, you know, stewardship, you know, the Hawaiian cultural values, you know, what do we do today to make that happen in the future, so that our identity is, again, even more aligned in that area. And so, I know I rambled a bit, but the whole idea of, you know, okay, what's going on in Maui is that can you do something that bolsters that? How do you inspire entrepreneurship around those ideas? And so there's fertile ground for a lot of things, but it takes people, and it takes people wanting to improve their own lives, you know. and for the betterment of our community.
I agree with you. I think we do need to start in the place of core strengths.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, I think what entrepreneurism can bring to this conversation and to the opportunity for a future more vibrant, more just, more resilient Hawaii is like, how do we design business models that are going to help us shift from quantity to quality, right? Mm-hmm. From transaction to relationship, mm-hmm. from a place mm-hmm. of like correction to connection, as one of mm-hmm. my mentors, Uncle Pono Shim would say. Mm-hmm. And like, how do we really, and if we think about regenerative travel, like, you know, the premise of that is that we have to be able to regenerate, right? Mm-hmm. So if we, as the stewards of Hawaii, of this land, if we don't create the opportunities, if the tourism partners do not create the opportunities for locals to find ways in which they can regenerate with Aina, then there's going to be a missed opportunity. And I think mm-hmm. we're going to continue to feel the pains of you know, the current tensions and conflict. Mm-hmm. So I think if we like how do we build out business models like yours that are trying to shift towards a more quality experience, right? Mm-hmm. High impact experience that are really focused on a couple of areas. Like when we say core strengths, we all love to eat over here, right? Mm-hmm. We all love to eat. We all love to talk story. So why not try and find entrepreneurs and provide funding opportunities to our storytellers, to our media makers? They're going to tell authentic stories in our ways that are also going to compel the kinds of travelers that we want, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. When we talk about food, we have we have an awesome food systems community here that is doing tremendous things. Mm-hmm. But why can't we work with them more closely to coordinate across, right? Well, so when we're talking about farm to school initiatives, why can't we also talk about, you know, initiatives that are also going to, you know, possibly benefit the conscious traveler, right?
Yes.
So yeah, we need entrepreneurs and innovators to help create the solutions that we want. And we need to source these folks from communities, mm-hmm. because that's going to be part of the solution making.
Correct. And, you know, we know over years, even pre-pandemic, there's a shift for the conscious traveler or the visitor that wants an authentic experience. We know that one of our greatest visitor and connective tissue, support system, are our cousins from Japan. Mm-hmm. You know, they want authentic experiences. They want the quality of what's grown local, what's sourced local, the most localicious, local authentic experience. You know, we know the Japan visitor is demanding that, but we also know a shift globally is also demanding that. You know, it's important that we continue to support those initiatives and endeavors. The PSA, Buy Local, Support Local, has been one theme that has been coming around. But as we think about that, John, talk to us a little bit about some of those areas of, you know, I know you're doing kind of like eco tours, and I think more recently, maybe you added that kind of like agricultural experience tour. Mm-hmm. So tell us about that, and then go a little bit into some of the agriculture work and aquaculture work you've been doing at Kualoa, just a little bit more.
Sure. And we have a relatively big visitor operation, and some of the things that people do are activities. We have horseback rides, ATV rides, a zip line, and our newest thing is e-bikes. And so people go through the property, and those are activities. But we also have tours of the property, and so we had to kind of develop, you know, our own brand of what is Kualoa, because nobody knows what Kualoa is. I mean, you know, so we had to develop this brand, and of course I won't go into the whole evolution of it, because we started way different from where we are now. We had helicopters and jet skis and, you know, things that didn't really fit, but we had to grow and evolve. So now, you know, part of our growth in agriculture is developed around the visitor. So we have 5 different tours of the property because the property is just under 4,000 acres. And each one of the tours highlights the ag and highlights kind of what we're doing. And so when we built a piggery, a 6,000 square foot piggery, we put it right on the tour. And so the visitor gets an experience, starting off with kind of an area where it looks like an ancient Hawaiian setting. And then so we talk about how, back in ancient times, there was no imports, no exports. And so I think you had mentioned, it's all about stories. It's all about stories and relationships. And so we tell a bunch of different stories. We have the Hawaiian cultural stories that we tell. We have the agricultural stories. We have, the history of the place. And then of course we have Hollywood, which is definitely a benefit. But that's what our whole thing is. How do you tell stories, and how do you tell stories that are relevant to the customer, that really hits their heartstrings, and people like environmental successes, and so when we're developing agriculture and we put it right on the tours, and people go through the taro patches and they go through different areas and they see, they see the beauty and everything. That's kind of what we try to do, is we leverage the strengths, actually, what I think are representative of Hawaii in general. This is a beautiful place. And really our biggest comment is always about the staff. It's really amazing. To your point, we're lucky we have a lot of local people, but it's not only local people. That everybody needs to belong. Everybody needs to, and we focus first on employees, and they feel they need to belong, and they need to feel proud of what they're doing. And then if they're sharing a place with a visitor that they're proud of and they can identify with, then it is even that more enriching. So I think, getting back to your point, we have these 5 different tours of the property. Each one goes into a different area. Each one of them focuses on a little bit of agriculture, whether it's oysters in the fish pond or shrimp in an old converted lo'i, or lo'i itself, or pigs or sheep or whatever it is. That's what we try to offer and give our guests.
Yeah. I want to touch upon what John said about this idea of belonging. You're right. I mean, that's core to humanity, right? That's sense of belonging, sense of connectedness is, really important. I just think we know when we've had magical and transformative moments. Like one that comes to mind. We tell
stories about it.
Right, we tell stories about it. And one of the moments that comes to mind is in 2016, where we had our Pani Kapuka event, right? Where we wanted to invite all of our supporters to come and help us close a puka within the wall that hadn't been closed for over 50 years. And it was significant because it represented community coming together over 15 plus years, and to celebrate, right? Celebrate the ancestral ingenuity that has been left for us, and then to celebrate it and then take it forward. And what was like one of the most outstanding moments is that when I was there and I looked to my left and to my right, 2,500 people. You saw military officers. You saw the governor. You saw moms and dads. You saw kupuna. You saw educators. You saw kumuhula. You saw business people. Folks that you might see on Bishop Street. And so it's this idea that we can all collectively come together and we can be there to serve Hawaii. And I just think that's the kind of experiences that we all want first as community. And if we think about like where are the opportunities where we need to restore, right? We need to restore lo'ikalo. We need to restore native ecosystems. We need to restore fish ponds. We need to restore fishing canoes. We need to kilo. We need to observe, right, the changes that are taking place because of the climate change crisis. And how do we make sure that we do that as a community first here at home, and then seek out opportunities to continue to invite the conscious traveler to join in into our kuleana because we belong here and because we belong to this legacy of kuleana.
And we need to pass that on to the visitor that they belong.
That's right.
And our newest program is the Malama program, and we provide an opportunity for people to get into the taro patch with Evie right now. It's a relatively small operation, but she's gotten great reviews. The program's gotten great reviews, and people love that. They because they're belonging now, and so. And the next one coming up is going to be a tree planting thing where people will be able to go up into and plant their own tree. And so those are, but people want to belong. They want to belong. They want to make a difference. The Panikapuka was an amazing event. Yeah. So that's great. Yeah.
All of us know we live in such a unique and beautiful place that we have family or friends that come and visit, right? And we have to also learn to play host personally, and we also want to create authentic experiences. And I recently had a friend visiting from college, and I was trying to figure out what authentic experiences could I take this really close friend on so they can really connect deeply with Hawaii, belong, find that sense of place. And, I was looking for ag tours. I was like, could have forced them on the things I'm passionate about. Kalamai, sorry, friend. But I looked for different ag tour opportunities, and I want to give a shout out Kohana Rum. We decided to go there. They were passionate about sampling alcohol. I was passionate about an agricultural tour. And I just have to say, they did a great job. I learned about native coal and sugarcane. And, growing up, you just know, oh, that's sugarcane. I was raised on top of an old sugar cane in Kapolei. Like our houses, our homes, Kapolei was built on old sugar cane. So to be able to connect just in an agricultural tour personally as a Native Hawaiian, not understanding all the native varieties, they could have picked any variety. Maybe there's non-native sugar cane that tastes better, but they said, no, we're going to use the native varieties and we're going to source those. We're going to teach people about them. And that's how we're going to create an authentic experience. So I just appreciate that they do that. They also take old barrels and some of that waste and have partners to transition that so it gets fully utilized so they can reduce their waste. So I think there definitely are more businesses and opportunities that in our community for businesses to be authentic, to create more of those authentic experiences. So there's definitely an opportunity to create more authentic visitor experiences. And so, when we think of circular economy and we talked about tools for those kind of building up, what are some of the things we need to work on, unweave or untie to make it easier for those opportunities to be plentiful, whether that's just for community, for personal, or to help businesses really be able to meet in this regenerative tourism model of circular economy? Is there missing links that we just kind of need to unravel, or whether it's legislative support, financial support, resources? What are those things that are tools, but more unraveling to those to create more ways for opportunities?
Yeah, I think the larger businesses, they don't really need the help. I mean, because they're established, and everybody needs help, I guess, to whatever extent. But I guess what you made me think about was there are, people in our community that would like to take advantage of that, but don't know how. And part of the whole dynamic of tourism, or tourism that needs to be managed a little different, is communities need to accept tourism on their own terms, and so you need to navigate that one. And if you have a farmer who would love to be able to make a little extra money by having somebody come experience, it's got to work for both sides, and obviously it's got to work for the neighbors too. You don't want to have a whole bunch of people going up to a place that they shouldn't be going because the neighbors don't like it. But I don't have the answer, but I think that's one of the challenges that we need to face is how do people who want to be involved in the visitor industry, how do they find out how to do it? And one of the things we've thought about, because we have a marketing system and people go to our website and all of that, is do we become a conduit for people in the community who want to offer their own experiences and where we're just and we don't have to be the only one doing that. There could be another way that if somebody doesn't want to be a slip and wallow and do the typical fishing thing, but he's a fisherman, he wants to go fishing, and once every 3 times a month he wants to take people out, help them, is that available? Is that possible? Somebody is a pig hunter and are there experiences like that one, the visitor wants, and 2, the local person wants, and is there an opportunity there? I'm not sure. And how do you connect them all? There's so many great things going on, in Hawaii that people would like to see. I mean, I know the Ma'o Farms people. Yes. They're wonderful. Yes. And they're not oriented toward visitors, and that's not their primary thing. But I know visitors would actually love to experience something as authentic as Ma'o Farms. And I don't want to throw Gary and Kukui into an area that they don't want to be, but I know that there are, visitors who want that kind of unique, small-time experience. And so that is an opportunity, I think. We still have to figure out how to put everybody together.
Absolutely. I want to offer a couple of concrete areas as well. One is I think we need to give more funding to DLNR, because they're underfunded, in my opinion, to do the work that they must do, to care for all of our.
Maybe to charge more money for some of the areas that are overused. Yeah.
Second point is we have examples now. We have good examples of a fee-based operation at Wainapa and Maui, as well as Ha'ena and Kauai. So let's expand that and now at Diamond Head, correct? So now let's expand that and look at other areas for which we can recoup some of the costs for ongoing active stewardship. I think also another thing I would offer is green fee. So the whole green fee policy, for which some kind of fee can be assessed. Like for example, if I travel to Aotearoa or other places, I'm happy to give $40, $50, $60, right? That is going to be recouped by that particular country and then put into the biosecurity control and other areas. So I'd love to see the legislature look at the merits of the green fee legislation and see what we can do to advance that. And then finally is Olelo Hawaii. Olelo Hawaii is an official language, and if we want to really continue to strengthen our connection as Kanaka Maoli, as Kama'aina, and if they're going to continue to be the employees of these various small companies, mid-sized companies, large companies, then we got to make sure that we continue to feed their knowledge base, right? And so that they're able to draw back to ancestral knowledge, to mo'olelo, to mele, and go deeper into the discovery of what makes Hawaii so special and unique. So let's continue to support the overall capacity of every resident, being able to access Olelo Hawaii. And let's see, I want to be able to see Olelo Hawaii and hear Olelo Hawaii. I love hearing Amy Kali in the airport, but let's hear Olelo Hawaii in all the spaces.
Great suggestions. And as an example, we have some amazing organizations like the Native Hawaiian Hospitality Association, who does cultural trainings, Olelo Hawaii trainings. but how do we connect all the very, very busy employees in the visitor industry and give them some time and space to access some of those opportunities? I think that's key. We know there's amazing programs for those seeking authentic experiences that we talked to before. Travel to Change is one opportunity where you can go and seek lo'i opportunities, stewardship opportunities, which NAHA has played a role in kind of uplifting and bringing more nonprofit organizations that really fit in that Vahipana support stewardship, Native Hawaiian owned nonprofits or Native Hawaiian nonprofits that can help continue to create more space for that. And we're just getting so short on time, and we kind of have moments just for closing thoughts. Again, we're here to kind of talk about opportunities to enhance and strengthen circular economies here in Hawaii, as well as regenerative tourism. We know that Hawaii Tourism Authority is really focused on Malama Ku'uhome or Malama Hawaii as a core theme. So, and as we close, we'll just give time for each of you for those kind of closing thoughts, or if there's something we've been talking about that you just needed to add an additional comment. It's kind of open floor to you, John and Mahina, to just close us out.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Kristen. It's and this has been wonderful, Mahine. Just seeing you again and being with you. No, I guess I'm an optimist. I think Hawaii's, the core strengths that we have are the people and our history and the culture and the olelo, all of that. And I'm optimistic that we can continue to build. It's one thing to start from a disadvantaged position, but we're not starting from a disadvantaged position. We need to be intentional about continuing to try to attract the mindful visitor. We need to continue to try to, develop, the infrastructure of tourism and our community better to serve all the needs. But I think it gets back to the Opuali'i concept of it really is incumbent upon every one of the leaders here. It doesn't matter what the sector we're in to try to keep on improving. And that whole po'okela, kulia ikanu, and just what can we do individually and collectively to push it forward? And the fund the DLNR. That's a great thing. Charge more for parks. Focus on the stress points, but not just complain about it. Come up with solutions. I feel for the people in Manuili, but too many people going and then in a place that can't accommodate them, and we need to focus on those kind of things. But I'm optimistic. I think we have a great community here. And I certainly appreciate NAHA for its leadership in bringing the culture to the focus of our most dominant industry. So thank you.
Hello. So I'd like to just read our Ho'okipa principle for Aina Aloha Economic Futures. We are inclusive and embrace the collective that will call Hawaii home, grounded in the fundamental understanding that is our kuleana to control and manage our resources in a way that allows us to fulfill our role as hosts here in our Aina Aloha. And so when I read this, I think of my daughter, my 5-year-old, and it's really neat because she and I are just been a little bit more intentional. So when we go and visit some friends or family in Kohala or maybe in Hilo, we're making a point to prepare to be a gracious and a akamai guest, right? So the other part of this whole equation is like, how do we make sure that when we go and visit somebody else's home, that we are well prepared, that we don't place undue burden, that we let folks know that we are coming, and that we bring gifts, and we bring our good intentions, and we bring a willingness and openness to learn. And I think, when I get to sit down with my daughter and we have these conversations, they're very enlightening for what we can do in all our small ways and in our large ways. It's like, how do we shift that? How do we shift the relationship to something that is so much more not only authentic, but it's just more ongoing as well. And you know, I think that we just need to continue to think of our place here, not only in Hawaii, but in the world. And, you know, we had a major climate change report that came out this past year. Many folks, we had a whole contingent that went to Copenhagen. And we know we only have 8 years for us to like really reverse the harmful impacts that we have as a human society. And instead of, you know, how do we create the situations that tourism is not the number one depleter of resource, of environmental resource, but how do we make it so that this sector can be like the primary contributor to quality of life? I think that's the challenge before us.